Konoha East Uchiha is very cautious. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176 Mercy. Boom. A deafening muffled sound came from the common grass in the land of grass. Even the Uchiha brats who were fighting in a melee on another battlefield nearby, as well as the remaining Iwagakure Chunin, all stopped what they were doing, looking in the direction where the loud noise came from. They knew that although the fight on their side was lively, if the winner was decided in a short time, they had to prepare early. In most cases, the battle between ninjas still depends on the strong leader to decide the outcome, but when they cast their sights on the battlefield they were paying attention to, a flash of blazing white lightning came into their eyes before the smoke and dust dispersed. All those who looked over here narrowed their eyes and were stung by the white light, so fast. The special jonin of the Iwagakure looked down at his chest and only had time to say such a last word, and then large mouthfuls of blood gushed out of his mouth. Bang! Then he lost all his strength and slowly fell backwards, breaking free from the chidori that Toshiro had inserted into his chest. As he fell to the ground, the stone stick that he had condensed with his own chakra and had broken into two pieces slowly fell out of his hand and fell on the grass, making two dull sounds. It turned out that when Toshiro used the high speed of the chidori to rush to the side of this special jonin, the other party had more or less noticed it and made a defensive posture. However, facing Toshiro's high-level lightning ninjutsu, neither the stone stick filled with earth attribute chakra in his hand nor the hardening technique on his chest could save his life. The opponent's lightning ninjutsu and piercing ability were too terrifying. Neither his own weapons nor his defense played a very good role in the face of this high-level ninjutsu that restrained his own attributes. His weapons were cut off and his defense was broken, so there was nothing unexpected about his ending. This lightning escape. Gangshan Jonin, who was secretly observing all of this and witnessed it all, was a little absent-minded at this time. He did not expect that the ninjutsu performed by the opponent could have such a terrifying power, and killed his subordinates with just one move. Although the opponent is only a special jonin, if it is only about strength and speed, many jonins may not be able to match him. If it were not for the lack of ninjutsu, illusion, secret technique, etc., the opponent would be a proper jonin. And this ninjutsu? I have never seen it before. I have never even heard of it. It's really a bit. The stone ball hidden in the bushes, acting as his eyes, observed the current situation more and more carefully. For a moment, this jonin of the rock ninja was in a dilemma. At this time, he was extremely passive. He launched a series of attacks, but he did not successfully kill the opponent under the condition of using his companions as bait. At this time, he lost the cooperation of his companions, and the opponent's state also recovered significantly. At this time, he could still kill the opponent? What if he just fled back to the camp alone? The battle was not going well, the mission failed, and so many people were lost. Those family ninjas who had long disliked him, I'm afraid they would. Just when Gangshan Jonin hesitated, looking at his opponent who was slowly losing his life, Dong Shalai couldn't help but feel a little sad. He didn't know if he would be killed mercilessly by ninjas from other countries like him one day. Although he successfully killed the opponent with the trump card of the Sage Mode this time, the Sage Mode is not omnipotent, not to mention his wild way. Although there are still two shadow clones in the camp at this time, helping him to reserve senjutsu chakra, the number of times these shadow clones can help him is always limited, and this large-scale ninja war is not 3 or 5 shadow clones to save the situation, and everything will be fine. The opponent's offensive is like a wave, one wave after another. After blocking this wave, I don't know how many waves of offensives will be waiting for me to face next. It gave him the feeling that he was driving a small boat in the turbulent deep sea, and the boat could be destroyed and people killed at any time because of a wave that came out of nowhere. This was also the reason why he had not used the Sage Mode just now. He did not want to play his trump card easily until the last moment. In order to make his trump card more durable, he spent a lot of thought and set up a shielding barrier in his tent. The purpose was that when the shadow clones were released, Only one shadow clone was outside the range of the barrier. The other shadow clones were inside the barrier. This prevented them from interfering with each other, so that every time he released the shadow clones, he would not release all the shadow clones at once. Concentrating and calming down, half squatting on the ground, Dong Xilang stretched out his right hand slowly, touched the ground with one hand, and began to sense the trace of the rock ninja who was hiding in the dark. Founded with the increase brought by the fairy technique, his perception at this time was extremely sharp. In just 1 or 2 breaths, he found the other party's hiding place. The opponent's current location is 30 meters in front of his left-hand side, about 5 meters underground. The opponent is starting to move this direction. Feeling the direction the opponent left, Dong Xilang couldn't help but smile. He didn't expect that the opponent would actually plan to retreat at this time. This is really unexpected. Even those subordinates who are still fighting are ignored. But it's really a bit whimsical. Do you think you can't do anything if you hide underground? After locking the opponent's position, Dong Xilang didn't drag his feet. After a few leaps, he had already arrived directly above the hiding place of Gangshan Jonin. With one hand, a beam of blazing white spear full of lightning chakra like a laser pierced straight towards the opponent's position without any hesitation. For him now, killing an enemy is no longer a burden. In this place where it's either you or me, he can't have any mercy, otherwise, he and his companions will suffer. Chapter 177 End. Hiding underground, preparing to abandon his subordinates and escape alone, Gangshan Jonin was just about to evacuate. His intuition sounded an alarm at this moment. He felt that he was about to face a disaster, as if someone was holding a cold ninja sword on his neck. All the muscles in his body were instantly tensed at this moment, ready to deal with any emergency at any time. But his reactions were relatively late. Just as he was about to dive deeper underground, a blazing white sharp blade, ignoring the several meters thick soil layer, pierced his entire body. What is this? Slightly lowering his head, looking at this weapon that was becoming more and more dazzling in the dark underground, the Jonin of the rock ninja only had time to ask a question at this time, and he could no longer control himself. Puff. A large mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth. It's not that he didn't want to make some dying struggles, but at this moment, his entire body was out of control because of this sudden attack. At this time, his whole body lost consciousness. This sharp attack paralyzed and lost control of his whole body. He could only wait quietly for death in this dark underground. On the ground, Dong Xilang slowly put away the lightning chakra in his hand. As the chakra in his hand slowly dissipated, the Chidori sharp spear in his hand that was directly inserted into the ground slowly withdrew its sharpness from the ground and slowly disappeared in Dong Xilang's hand. Since Kakashi's Chidori has been copied, how could he miss the Chidori series of ninjutsu upgraded by the second pillar? It was just that his own state was not good just now, and the chakra surplus was not enough, so he did not use it. However, in this kind of sage mode, as long as he does not care about the consumption of chakra, this ninjutsu that is very suitable for pretending can be used without hesitation. At the same time, this ninjutsu is still very useful against those rock ninjas hidden underground. Combined with his perception ability, it is just like using a spear to fork the fish swimming in the water, and one fork is accurate. Although those rock ninjas hiding underground would bring them advantages such as concealment and defense, the resistance underground would undoubtedly be countless times greater than that of the air. This made it easier for his Chidori sharp spear to hit the opponent's vital points. Any ninjutsu has weaknesses, and the great filial son really did not deceive me. When Dong Xiang finished cleaning up the enemies on this side, the enemies on Yen's side basically had no chance to escape. Facing Dong Xiang who had his hands free, they didn't even have a chance to escape, and could only die with regret, unwillingness and regret. For Dong Xiang in this state, these Chunins had no room to resist at all. They didn't even use ninjutsu. He just used the ninja sword on his waist to easily solve these rock ninjas. This state is really intoxicating. Feeling his own strength at this time, Dong Xiang couldn't help but indulge in it. It would be great if he could always maintain this state. In that case, there would be no need to be so cautious in dealing with the three wars. Look at Kyoxia. She's injured. It's all my fault. If she hadn't saved me, she wouldn't have been injured before he could enjoy himself for long. His former friend, Uchiha Longnuo, interrupted his yi. At this time, he was holding a little girl who was about his age, looking at him in panic. Tears were rolling in his eyes. His whole face was full of panic and regret, and even his originally bright black eyes were slightly red at this time, as if they were about to open their eyes. It turned out that before he rushed over, his companions who were about 12 years old besieged those Iwagakure Chunin together. Although they were in an absolute advantage in terms of numbers, the other side was not a pushover, and each of them had incomparably rich combat experience. And Longnuo, the idiot, didn't check for a while, and was tricked by the other side. He exchanged his own injuries for a chance to kill him. If it weren't for Asaka, who was cooperating with him to besiege the rock ninja, who was more alert and took the blow for him at the critical moment, it would be Uchiha Ryuuo who was lying on the ground at this time. Although he escaped, he was not happy at all. Instead, he felt extremely guilty. If it weren't for his negligence, Asaka wouldn't have to take the blame for him, and now he didn't know whether he was alive or dead. How could he not regret it? Don't be nervous, put Asaka steadily on the ground. I'll check the situation first. Seeing that his former playmate was injured, although he didn't know what the situation was, Dong Shilang didn't panic. He calmly commanded the other party to make way and began to carefully check the situation of Asaka. The 15 ninjas here are almost all childhood playmates of Dong Shilang, Yanets. Most of them are around 11 or 12 years old. The oldest one is Uchiha's. Yan and him can be regarded as the 3 people sent by the family to escort their group of new recruits. So Dong Shilang didn't dare to be careless and hurriedly checked it carefully. Well, there is no big problem. Just 3 broken ribs, temporarily unconscious. Recuperate in the rear hospital for a while and you will be fine. Fortunately, Kyoxia did not suffer any fatal injuries. The little girl has been smart since she was a child. I think she had made preparations in advance before she was injured, so there was no big problem. While making seals with both hands and began to perform medical ninjutsu, he looked up at Uchiha Longnuo. Sure enough, as soon as he looked up, he saw the changes in the opponent. At this time, Longnuo's dark eyes had turned red, and there was a black magatama in each of them that was slowly rotating. This kid, he opened his eyes at this time. Speaking of Uchiha's bloodline limit, it's really fucked up. Not to mention Longnuo, even his 2 teammates are in a similar situation. It is always after something that makes you sad and regretful that you can successfully open your eyes. For example, Uchiha Yan. She opened her eyes when she saw her father's body on the battlefield with her own eyes. She couldn't stand the stimulation. The Uchiha were like this. In almost every war, they would always have ninjas who would lose their lives in the war, and at the same time, their relatives and friends would constantly successfully open the Sharingan because of their deaths. Chapter 178 Hatred. After stabilizing Uchiha Asaka's condition, Tawashiro didn't pay too much attention to Longnuo's eyes opening. Take a team that is in better condition and go to Yan and the others to take a look. He asked his friends to send the injured Asaka to the rear camp, and then he told Uchiha Yan, I'll go to Chayan and the others to take a look. Yan, I'll leave this to you. Tell me if there is anything. Send a signal in time. We will be back soon. His condition at this time was very good. If it was wasted in vain, it would be a pity to gather this natural energy with great difficulty. Moreover, there were not only their Uchiha teams stationed nearby, there were 2 other Uchiha teams stationed with them, and they also helped each other and took care of each other. Tawashiro, your current situation. Seeing that Tawashiro had to go to another battlefield, Yan opened her mouth, as if she wanted to say something but stopped. She was worried about Tawashiro's current condition. The other party had just dealt with a special jonin and a jonin, and then used medical ninjutsu. If this continued, the consumption was too great. Shians were both a little worried about the other party's situation. It's okay, I just took a soldier pill in advance, and I'm in very good condition now. I'll leave the battlefield here to you. Let them deal with the bodies of those rock ninjas. And there's a rock ninja jonin there underground. Remember to be careful. lest there are any traps or something like that. Well, using the soldier pill as an excuse to explain the chakra filling in her body is also quite good. It is necessary to be very careful when dealing with the corpse of a ninja. No one knows what traps the other party will set on their body or in the ninja tool bag. If you are not careful, you may not be able to touch the corpse, but instead lose your life. Well, don't worry, I will keep an eye on them. Seeing that the other party knew what was going on, she didn't persuade him too much. Dong Shilang, this guy, is not like this idiot. He is still relatively stable. There is no need to worry about it yourself. But these contemporaries who have not been on the battlefield for a long time need to be kept a close eye on. Otherwise, if these guys had any accidents in front of him, he would not be able to face their parents when he returned. From this, we can see the effect of the family's early training of this group of people. With these relatively experienced veterans of the battlefield, many fearless casualties can be avoided. At the same time, it can also allow the main force of the family to fight on the battlefield without distraction. Not long after, Dong Shilang came to another battlefield adjacent to them. Unlike their side, there was still a fierce battle here. Whether it was the Uchiha side or the Rock Ninja side, neither side was sure to defeat the other in a short time. They were in a stalemate. The arrival of Dong Shilang successfully broke the balance between them. He did not rush directly, but took advantage of his advantage of hiding and quietly approached these rock ninjas who were fighting for their lives with their opponents. He suddenly launched an attack and caught them off guard. Dong Shilang, thank you. If you hadn't come, we don't know how many casualties there would be. Uchiha Chiyin, at this time, sincerely thanked Dong Shilang. Compared to Toshiro and his men, their casualties were quite serious. There were 4 people who died and were seriously injured. If he hadn't come to support them, it would have cost them a lot to defeat these rock ninjas. You should say less and save your energy. You are seriously injured now. I advise you to take a good rest. Otherwise, if you can't hold on for 2 waves of attacks, you will probably. As he spoke, Toshiro formed seals with both hands and began to perform medical ninjutsu to treat the other party. At this time, Uchiha Chiyin's injuries were still quite serious. Not only did he have 3 external injuries on his body, but even his chakra was seriously consumed. If he didn't take a good rest, he really couldn't hold on for long. Ah, I know, but who can come to replace me at this time? Besides, 3 days ago, Yukido. At this point, Uchiha Chiyin couldn't say anything more. His expression looked very gloomy. Even his own Sharingan was revealed uncontrollably. Yukido. Dong Shilang was stunned for a moment after hearing this, because Uchiha Yukido was the same age as him, and they had played together before. If I remembered correctly, that guy was now in charge of patrolling the camp. I didn't expect to hear the news of his death here. Just 3 days ago, his team was attacked by the Rock Ninja. And finally I promised my aunt that I would protect him. Now I don't know how to face them when I go back. As he spoke, 2 symmetrical magatama began to rotate slowly in Uchiha Chiyin's red eyes. A deep self-blame and regret appeared on his face. If Dong Shilang remembered correctly, Uchiha Yukido was Chiyin's cousin. The two had a good relationship since childhood, but he didn't expect it to become like this now. No wonder the other party fought so hard in the battle just now. My condolences. Dong Shilang could only comfort the other party in this way after restabilizing the green light in his hand, but such comfort did not work for Chiyin. Thank you, Toshiro. I will kill more Iwagakure to avenge Yukido Chiyin. Yukido is also my friend. I am also very sad to hear the news of his death, but now you are not only Yukido's relative, but also their captain. If you are too emotional, have you ever thought about their ending? Facing Toshiro's question, Uchiha Chiyin did not answer immediately, but closed his Sharingan with a sad look on his face. However, the pain and unwillingness on his face could not be concealed. Chiyin, this war cannot be ended in a short time. Only if you live well can you help Yukido avenge better. Toshiro also knew that it was almost impossible to persuade an Uchiha not to be emotional, but watching the other party die with the Iwagakure like this without caring about his life, he could not do it. The other party was not only his friend of the same clan, but also his comrade in arms, and he was also the captain of this Uchiha team. Chapter 179 Consolation. Facing Dong Shilang's persuasion, Uchiha Chayan closed his eyes and said nothing, as if he didn't hear what he said. Dong Shilang was also quite helpless about this. He was not Chayan, and he couldn't empathize with his current pain. He could only change his perspective and persuade him, hoping that he would not be blinded by hatred and anger. Otherwise, the people of the same clan following him would be in danger. But he had no idea how much effect his words would have. With the characteristics of the family's bloodline limit, the chances of this guy not going crazy at the time were really small. He could only hope that this guy could think more open-mindedly. At the same time, he also had a bond with his companions behind him. Chayan, you are not simply alone now. Look at these companions behind you. Each of them has parents, relatives, brothers and sisters, waiting for them to return home safely from this war. I hope you will think more about their endings when you make any decision. Don't let the tragedy that happened to you happen to them, regardless of whether the other party listened or not. He hastily helped the other party deal with his injuries, said hello to a few familiar fellow tribesmen, and left directly. Go to the battlefield where Uchiha just went to support. As for Uchiha Chayan, he can only leave it to fate. He is not a saint. Being able to come to support when he has the spare energy is already the limit of what he can do. If there is more, it is really sorry. His ability is limited. He can only say that he can't help. Don't let the tragedy that happened to you happen to them. After Dong Shilang left, Uchiha Chayan, who had been ignoring his consolation, opened his eyes at this time. In those somewhat lifeless black eyes, his companions were reflected at this time. Looking at them one by one, either silently bandaging their own wounds or resting exhausted, he began to mutter to himself. For a moment, he fell into deep entanglement. He rushed to the battlefield on the other side again, and the situation here was not much better. It was just that compared with Kayan and his team, there were no deaths. However, correspondingly, the number of seriously injured people had increased significantly. The medical ninjas in this team were obviously a little too busy. Although the family has increased the training of medical ninjas over the years, the effect is not very ideal. It can only be said that from the previous personal resistance, it has become a team of more than 10 people with 1 or 2 medical personnel. It's just that these few 1 or 2 people, under this situation, are really a little overwhelmed and can't take care of all the wounded. This is not the family's top management who don't want to train more medical ninjas. It's really that the family members have no talent in yang escape. Often among a dozen family ninjas, only a few members can successfully condense yang escape chakra. This made the family's top leaders somewhat powerless. In such a front-line battlefield, many times, they could only watch helplessly as the ninjas of these families died unwillingly because they could not get effective treatment. As for asking the village to transfer some medical ninjas to support, the top leaders of those families have also made efforts in this regard. It's just that the reply from the village is also quite official now. Every place is short of medical ninjas. Do you Uchiha also lack them? That's easy. Wait until Tsunade has trained enough medical ninjas. As for the trained medical ninjas, why haven't they been assigned to your Uchiha camp? I'm sorry, this is not our responsibility. Why don't you go upstairs and ask? Without too much nonsense, Toshiro, who had just come over, began to help the medical staff here share the pressure. He started to rescue these seriously injured people directly. Haruyan, take this blood-boosting pill. Toshiro. Am I going to die soon? I haven't put on a beautiful wedding dress. Haven't been a mother yet. Not yet. As she spoke, a stream of crystal tears slid down her face that was covered in blood and dust. Uchiha Haruyan, whose mind was already blurry due to excessive blood loss, saw her childhood playmate at this time, and it was as if she was having a last burst of light. She began to mutter to herself. It seemed that she had already anticipated her own ending. It's going to be okay. Don't worry, Haruyan. You will have a happy marriage and a pair of lively and lovely children. While stuffing the blood-boosting pill in her hand into her friend's mouth, she took out a silver syringe from her ninjutsu bag, injected it into Uchiha Haruyan's carotid artery. You guys hold Chunyin down, don't let her move, don't let her fall asleep. While instructing Uchiha who was helping him, Dong Shilang's hands did not stop at all and began to treat Chunyin's wounds. The stimulant he just used on the other party was developed by Uchiha Mika, which was specially used for seriously injured people on their deathbed. It can make Chunyin be more energetic at this time and not fall into shock, so that these wounded can be rescued better. At the same time, he did not forget to let's talk to the other party to help distract the other party's attention, because at this time, the wound on the other party's body is really serious. If he wants to treat it himself, it is inevitable that he will touch the other party's wound. And at this time, it is too late to give anesthesia. As Dong Shilang pulled out a ninja sword stuck in the other party's body, Chunyin began to struggle with pain because of the severe pain. If it weren't for Furs and a few of his fellow tribesmen around him to help him, it would be obviously impossible to continue the operation. Chunyin was seriously injured. Not only did she have the ninja swords left by the enemy, but she also had several fractures and traces of rock ninjutsu. In addition, she had lost a lot of blood due to the trauma. If she was not treated urgently, she might not be able to hold on for a few minutes, not to mention being sent to the rear for treatment. Even so, Dong Shilang was not too sure that he could pull her back from the brink of death. He could only do his best. I hope it's not too late. Chapter 180 Rescue. In this cruel battlefield, almost every ninja will, at the last moment of his life, turn his inner fear, unwillingness and other emotions into his last strength, and stab the enemy in front of him with the weapon in his hand. At this time, the opponent must be careful, because when a ninja is dying, he may burst out several times his usual strength at this moment. If you don't handle it well, you may pay a tragic price because of the opponent's dying counterattack, just like Uchiha Haryuki now. Puff, hiss. With the movement of Dong Shilang's hands and Haryuki's struggle, the ninja sword that pierced her abdomen was pulled out by Dong Shilang. As the weapon that blocked the wound left the wound, a stream of blood began to spurt out uncontrollably. It was just because the owner of the wound was losing too much blood at this time, and soon the state of spraying turned into a large area of blood loss. If this problem cannot be solved in a short time, even if Dong Shilang just fed Chunyin a blood-increasing pill, she will not be able to hold on for long and will die from excessive blood loss. And such a large-scale blood loss, if you want to stop it quickly, even with the help of medical ninjutsu, it is impossible to do it in a short time, because time is too late. And as time goes by, the mental excitement caused by the drug will be like a parabola, slowly reaching its highest point, and then quickly sliding down. If it really drags on until that time, with such a bad operating environment now, even Tsunade in her prime will be helpless. Shadow clone technique. I feel that there is really no way to pull Chunyin back from the brink of death in a short time. Dong Shilang used this ninjutsu developed by the second generation to deal with Uchiha, and used it to save the life of another Uchiha. You guys hold Chunyin down. Don't let her move around, and don't let her faint after telling who was helping him again. Dong Shilang's real body and his shadow clone began to rescue the little girl who had just turned 12. At this time, looking at the shadow clone who was controlling the amount of bleeding, Dong Shilang rarely put his hands together and slowly formed a seal to condense chakra. According to his current chakra control level, if he just condensed chakra, he almost didn't need to use both hands to form seals at the same time, but at this time, he couldn't help but be cautious. He carefully moved his palm filled with chakra to the wound on Chunyin's abdomen, carefully extended his chakra, and began to explore the details of the other party's abdominal wound. There are 2 bleeding spots in the abdominal cavity, and the entire abdominal wound is about 3 centimeters. As Dong Shilang's chakra penetrated, he knew the inside and outside of Chunyin's most troublesome wound. But the next treatment, I didn't look at this time, because he just pulled the ninja sword out of the opponent's body, and Chunyin groaned in pain, sweating profusely. Just let's at this time put a wooden block into Chunyin's mouth. Dong Shilang began to control his chakra and began to accurately attach to the opponent's wounds, not only the wounds on the opponent's stomach, but also the wounds on the intestinal wall inside. Then he concentrated and carefully controlled his chakra to enter Chunyin's body. Concentrate. With Dong Shilang's light shout, the chakra attached to the opponent's wounds began to change drastically, causing the capillaries in Chunyin's wounds that were losing a lot of blood to lose their original function, and at the same time a burnt smell came out. With Dong Shilang's light shout, Chunyin, who had just taken a breath from the pain of the ninja sword being pulled out of her body, began to struggle violently at this time. If her body and limbs were not firmly held down, if there was not a piece of wood in her mouth at this time, I'm afraid she has already started to scream, struggle, and roll over because of the sudden pain. As a ninja, if it was just an external injury, she could still hold on, just like just now. Although it was painful, she gritted her teeth and got through it. But now, she really couldn't hold on to the pain, because Dong Shilang not only took care of her wounds on the surface, but also took care of her abdominal cavity, and also started the hemostasis treatment. Directly used the fire attribute to change the nature of her wounds to make her wounds burn, so as to achieve the purpose of stopping bleeding. It made her feel that her abdomen was pierced by a red-hot steel bar at this time, and it stayed on it, and was constantly using the high temperature carried by its body to burn her flesh and internal organs. Looking at Uchiha Haruhi, who was already in tears and snot because of the severe pain at this time, Dong Shilang did not neglect it at all. After urgently treating this wound, he quickly helped her deal with the fractures and external injuries. He knew that if it weren't for the medicine just now, the other party would have fainted by now. Although she was still awake now, she probably wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. It wasn't that he tortured her on purpose. It was because she had just lost too much blood. If he couldn't help her stop bleeding as soon as possible, even if he fed her a blood-increasing pill, it would not stop Chunyin from dying gradually, although it was causing her great pain now. Fortunately, the most difficult problem had been solved temporarily, although there were many sequelae and even lesions might occur as a result. There was one thing that could buy a lot of time. With the magic of medical ninjutsu, if there were dozens of hours of recovery, the other party's condition would be greatly improved. Even if Chunyin's wounds, which he had roughly treated, recurred, he was not afraid. By that time, I believe Chunyin's condition should have recovered a lot and she could have undergone normal surgery. At most, the lesions would be removed, and they were not extremely important organs. It was just some flesh and blood, and a little bit of intestines. Compared with the opponent's life, he could still tell which was more important. With the efforts of Dong Shilang and his own shadow clone, Chunyin's condition began to be slowly under control. It was no longer like at the beginning, when she could lose her life at any time due to her own injuries and excessive blood loss. Chapter 181 Emotions. After exhaling a deep breath, Dong Shilang couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw Uchiha Haruhi, who was now in a coma. Now the other party's situation has basically stabilized, and he has done his best. The rest depends on Haruhi himself and the Six Paths Sage's blessing. I hope that this old man who doesn't know where to hide can bless his descendants, but then again, whether it is Dong Shilang or Madara, they are all Uchiha, which can be regarded as the so-called Six Paths direct bloodline. It's just that they are not very popular with the old man. At this time, Dong Shilang breathed a sigh of relief, as well as Uchiha Tetsu who was helping him, and the two strong men he pulled. Just now, watching their teammates being treated so cruelly, even the bystanders dared not breathe. They were afraid that because of their own reasons, they would distract Dong Shilang's attention and cause any accidents to their companions who were being rescued. Seeing that the rescue was over and their companions were getting better, they all relaxed. Just relaxing like this, coupled with the fact that they had just experienced a big battle, they couldn't even stand steadily for a while. Actually, this group of family members were still taken care of by their elders. The number of rock ninjas coming from the main battlefield was basically limited. Even if they were a little beyond their tolerance, it was still quite limited. There wouldn't be a large group of rock ninjas rushing towards them, and compared to the Tawashiro team at the front, the impact on the remaining two teams was relatively small. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be able to hold on until Tawashiroans came to support them. A week later, in the Konoha camp in the Land of Grass, in Uchiha Tawashiro's tent, a large group of Uchiha kids who had just come down from the battle were gathering. As precious combat power, even if they had to be consumed, Konoha would maximize the value of these Uchiha. Therefore, from time to time, they could still get some time to rest. At this time, everyone gathered in Tawashiro's tent because they, a group of little brats, were not qualified to have their own separate tent. Toshiro was a special talent and a Uchiha with 3 Magatama, so he was treated like this. He could often travel between Konoha and the camp, so he could always bring some private goods with him, such as now. In the center of the tent, there was a portable natural gas tank, which was relatively rare in this world, and a specially designed stove. There was a large pot of beef, potatoes, vegetables, and other dishes like oat and beans stewed on it. His friends were rarely gathered together at this time, enjoying the rare delicacies in this camp. You can't treat yourself badly there, right? Toshiro, the natural gas you asked Uncle Tetsudo to make is really convenient. Not only is it easy to use, but it also produces no smoke when burning. The friend who was waiting to eat expressed his opinion on this new gadget and gave it a high evaluation. Of course, I'm not just planning to use it in the tent. If I go on a mission in the future, I'm also planning to take it with me. I'm fed up with the marching rations distributed by the village. Hey, is this really okay? Won't it expose my position? Seeing that Toshiro actually had this idea, the friend couldn't help but ask such a question. You know, when a ninja is on a mission, he pays great attention to hiding his tracks. The other party actually wanted to use this kind of open fire during the mission, and he felt that he should still dissuade him. Don't worry, even if we use this to cook, we will decide based on the situation. We will definitely not use this in dangerous places. Besides, even if we don't use this to cook, we can use it to keep warm when we rest at night. Of course, we will only use it in absolutely safe places. Is it still possible? Recalling the scene described by Dong Shilang in his mind, this friend thought, this seems to be a good idea. After all, they are still relatively young, and they are relatively quick to accept Dong Shilang's proposal of breaking the traditional things. There is no obstacle in my heart. You bastards, you actually started eating without waiting for me. While the other party was distracted, the friend who already felt that the food in the pot was almost cooked took the initiative and started eating. You are too stupid. Taro, this piece of beef is mine, don't fight with me. Looking at the friends who were in a mess because of the food, Dong Shilang smiled knowingly and joined the battle for food. The reason why Dong Shilang did this was actually well thought out. These foods are not delicious at all, but they are better than those big pot meals in this camp. The reason why he gathered some of his friends here for dinner is to help them relieve their anxiety. Although these people have received ninja training, they are still young. They often see their companions or themselves injured or dead. After a long time, they will be more or less mentally abnormal. If they are adults, it is easier to deal with. Whether it is alcohol or any other method, they can vent this fear. But they are just a group of young kids, and these methods suitable for adults are obviously not suitable for them. Dong Shilang, who saw all this, chose this method after some consideration, so that they can relax their tense nerves appropriately. Otherwise, if it goes on for a long time, it is estimated that these friends of his will one day be unable to hold it. But whether this will work, he, as an outsider, is not very sure. But it wouldn't hurt to invite everyone to have a meal together. At most, he would just lose some money. Although he wasn't rich now, he could still afford a hot pot. Yes, it was a hot pot. He didn't like the trouble, so he chose a more convenient way to eat it. But the effect seemed to be okay. Chapter 182 Awkward. Not long after, the big pot of specially added stew was eaten up by these guys. Even the soup base was swept away. It fully illustrates what it means to be a half-grown boy who eats me out of money. Not only this pot of ingredients, but also the prepared dishes next to it that were prepared for the next time were all eaten up by them like hot pot. Dong Shilang, who was watching from the side, was heartbroken and his mouth twitched constantly. However, he was relieved to see his friends, whose expressions changed from numbness and deadness at the beginning to lively and lively. Finally, his efforts were not in vain. Speaking of which, Dong Shilang, you are really cruel. Chunyin told me that she still misses you until now after eating and drinking. They naturally entered the chat session, and Koxia, who had just returned from the rear hospital, said to Dong Shilang with joy at this time, I didn't expect you to be so cruel and treat a girl like this. You know, you saw Chunyin's most embarrassing side. Thanks to the medical ninjutsu, Kouxia's injuries were healed in just 1 week. It was just that when she was hospitalized in the rear hospital, she met Uchiha Chunyin, who was also recuperating there. The two of them couldn't help but start chatting. From Chunyin's mouth, Kouxia also learned about her tragic experience and the culprit who caused it all. Dong Shilang, cruel, obsessed, cruel, and embarrassed. These words are combined, and they also happened between a man and a woman. For a moment, the friends in the tent began to fill in the gaps in their minds, and at the same time, they all pricked up their ears, and the gossip fire in their hearts began to burn. I hope to hear some more explosive news. Seeing his friend's performance, Dong Shilang supported his forehead helplessly. These guys really can't be left comfortable and idle, otherwise they will think of something. Kouxia, don't talk nonsense. Chunyin was in a critical condition at the time, and I had no choice. Although the treatment was cruel and painful, it saved her life, didn't it? In order not to cause unnecessary misunderstandings, Dong Shilang quickly explained, otherwise it would take less than a day. It is estimated that some messy messages began to fly all over the sky. Hearing all this, it was just because Dong Shilang treated Chunyin. The action was a bit rough, and the little friends couldn't help but be disappointed. At the same time, they turned their heads to look at Uchiha Kouxia, hoping to hear some more explosive news from her mouth, so as to satisfy their gossipy souls. That's true, but she is a girl, crying in front of you, and she has lost all her modesty and dignity. With the pain and psychological trauma you have caused her, I guess Chunyin will remember you for the rest of her life. Hearing Dong Shilang's explanation, Uchiha Kouxia did not intend to let him go. Instead, he continued. At the same time, her expression became more playful, and her tone became more ambiguous, making the friends excited. Dong Shilang felt helpless about what Uchiha Kouxia said. At that time, Chunyin was dying, and his treatment successfully saved her life. But the pain caused was not only to make her cry. The other party was in a life-and-death crisis, and even her spirit was forced to be stimulated by drugs to stay awake. Her body functions were on the verge of losing control, and some Uchihas and the remaining two clansmen who were helping on the side may not have noticed anything unusual because of the chaos, smoke, blood, and sweat on the battlefield. Dong Shilang, who was treating Chunyin throughout the whole process, can be said to know everything well. At that time, the other party may not pay attention to it because of too much pain, but after receiving treatment in the rear hospital and surviving the critical period and regaining consciousness, recalling everything at that time, it was simply shameful and angry. She wished she hadn't received that treatment and had died. Her young girl's heart was shattered to pieces. She felt like she had no desire to live. At this time, Uchiha Asaka appeared. As a patient, Asaka comforted and counseled her. Chunyin was depressed and weak at the time. She couldn't help but tell the truth to Asaka, and let the other party know this unspeakable thing. Uchiha Asaka, who had just been discharged from the hospital, teased Dong Shilang with this matter at this time. He was a little bit overwhelmed for a while, although he was trying to help the other party at that time. He knew some things that he shouldn't know, and he still felt guilty. Compared to this, we haven't congratulated Long Yuo for successfully opening the Sharingan. Faced with Asaka's step-by-step pressure, Dong Shilang had to start using the method of diverting attention. He moved Uchiha Long Yuo, who had just opened the Sharingan, out to distract everyone's attention. Although it is old-fashioned, it must be admitted that this trick is quite useful. Humphrey, coward Uchiha Kouxia was quite dissatisfied with this. She had prepared a lot of arguments to test the other party's attitude. However, seeing that her friends had already shifted their attention to Long Yuo, she was helpless and could only grumble in dissatisfaction. Dong Shilang completely ignored this. Kouxia mentioned this matter and pursued it relentlessly. He still knew a little about the deep meaning it contained. It was just that in this war period, he really didn't have the heart to have a life-and-death love with a 12-year-old girl. Not to mention how big the gap is between his and the other party's mental age. Even if this point is ignored, in the current situation, no one knows whether they can still live in this world tomorrow. Too much investment in this matter is really putting the cart before the horse. The most critical point is that he and the other party are only 12 years old. Even if it is ... what can happen, what else can happen? Instead of thinking about it, It would be better to think about how to improve his own strength so that he can survive this cruel Third Ninja World War. As for other things, let's wait until he grows up a little bit. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183 Accident. A bright moon hangs high in the sky. From time to time, it reveals half of its body from the gap in the clouds, shyly and timidly looming. It casts a touch of light on the earth, and then disappears. Just at the edge of the Konoha camp, a bonfire is burning fiercely at this time, dancing with the night wind. The shadows beside the bonfire are changing constantly in order to prevent himself from being sensed by Jiraiya, who is also in the camp when absorbing natural energy. Dong Shilang had to move his training place as far away from this toad sage as possible. Although according to the original book, the other party should not have the ability to perceive, but who can say for sure? It is better not to be discovered by him if he can. The time he needs to enter the sage mode now, as he has been using it continuously over the years. There is a feeling of practice makes perfect. For example, now the time can be controlled to about 20 minutes, compared with 2 years ago when he just learned the sage mode. It is nearly 1/3 faster. He didn't know whether it was because he had been using senjutsu for a long time, which activated his body and made him more adaptable to senjutsu, or was it because his chakra had increased in the past 2 years, which made it easier for him to neutralize senjutsu chakra. He knew that if he wanted to practice senjutsu, his own chakra amount was a very important criterion. He suspected that the reason why he couldn't sense natural energy for a long time in the past was probably related to his chakra amount. He didn't meet the standard until he was 10 years old. He cultivated into sage mode in the special environment of the Island of Oblivion. But everything was moving in a good direction, he was sure of that. I don't know if I have a chance to be like the first generation Hokage. Sage mode, just turn it on. Looking at the clouds floating in the sky. After completing today's practice, Dong Shilang couldn't help but sigh. How great it would be if he could turn on sage mode freely. Who's over there at this moment? Dong Shilang seemed to sense something and looked towards the darkness that the campfire could not illuminate. At the same time, his hand had already touched the ninja sword behind him. At this time, a strange breath came quietly and so close to him that he couldn't help but be highly nervous. Now is wartime. Although it is unlikely that an enemy can hide from the heavy defenses and sneak into the camp without being noticed, but it is better to be careful in everything. Hey, I didn't expect that Dong Shilang's 5 senses are so sharp. It's really surprising. Before Dong Shilang could take the next step, this sudden uninvited guest showed up, and as soon as he showed up, he let out a strange laugh that was unknown and creepy. At the same time, he used his unique voice to praise Dong Shilang. He didn't even need to see the face of the owner of this voice. Just this highly recognizable and distinctive voice made Dong Shilang know who was coming. At the same time, a voice screamed in his heart, "It's him, it's that man." Less than 5 meters in front of Dong Shilang, a black shadow-like thick ink began to wriggle, twist, stretch violently as Dong Shilang's eyes reached, and then turned into a young man with a unique temperament. He just stood here, and Dong Shilang could feel that a sticky, slippery, and cold chakra began to permeate the air nearby with the appearance of this man. It made Dong Shilang feel like he was being stared at by a cold-blooded animal. The owner of this creepy voice is the disciple of the third Hokage, one of the 3 ninjas of Konoha, a member of the future Akatsuki organization, the founder of the Hidden Sound Village, the master killer, the scientist, and the human trafficker. His representative works include, on how to make a deal with the god of death. Others have to offer their souls when summoning the god of death, but he summoned the god of death, and the god of death not only got a snake skin, but also the souls of 4 people, plus a pair of hands. The god of death makes a deal with him, and the less loss, the more profit. Others believe in the will of fire, but he is devoted to studying technology and life, and is nicknamed Einstein Snake by netizens. Others get older and older, but he gets younger and younger. He may not be the best fighter in Naruto, but he is the hardest to kill. He does science in the world of ninja, gets stuck in bugs in front of the god of death, and pursues immortality in the world of Naruto. He is sometimes male and sometimes female, neither male nor female, and even neither human nor snake. He has the most scientific running posture and the most snake-skinned way of escaping. People spit out snakes, snakes spit out people, people spit out people, snakes spit out people, and people spit out swords. He has long hair, a long tongue, a long neck, and a longer life. He was a terrifying boss in the early stage, and a funny guy in the later stage. He was once obsessed with collecting forbidden techniques, kidnapping children everywhere, and planting strawberries for people from time to time. In order to pursue immortality, he is willing to go to the darkness. It is said that Snake has the core technology. He will become the Hokage when Boruto comes, let alone the computer Thunder Car. Konoha may be able to reverse colonize. Dare the Otsutsuki come? The man is slim, wearing a very ordinary Konoha standard vest, with long flowing black hair and a fair face. If it weren't for the purple oil paint in the corner of his eyes, there would be an indelible coldness in his pupils that are different from ordinary people. With the earring on his right ear, it would be believed that he is a melancholy middle-aged handsome man. But when he thought of the other party's perversion, Dong Shilang couldn't control himself and wanted to run away. Of course, Snake at this time was far from the perversion he later became. It should be said that before he immersed himself in human experiments, the other party was just a slightly perverted ninja. Now it should be that they have just come into contact with each other, and these things have not been long. I think he can still be regarded as a Konoha ninja. This also made Dong Shilang's nervous mood relax a lot. Even so, he would occasionally imagine in his mind whether the other party would suddenly stretch his neck and plant a strawberry on his body. If so, should he cooperate? Or, to be honest, in Tawashiro's opinion, the biggest golden thigh in the entire Naruto is none other than Uncle Snake. As long as you don't care about the other party's perverted snake-type ninjutsu, and at the same time you don't have the body he loves, there's nothing wrong with getting in touch with this cross-dressing guy, because his black technology is too good. It's a pity that he is an Uchiha. Chapter 184 Uncle Snake. Ha, ha, I didn't expect that Senior Orochimaru would have the leisure to come out and enjoy the moonlight. Well, today's moonlight is really nice. At this time, Dong Shilang had to greet him, which was considered to ease his embarrassment, because he was too nervous. He didn't even know what to say for a moment. It's not that he didn't have the courage, but the big boss opposite him was really famous, and he was an Uchiha, who knew the other party's research had reached this stage. Now it was late at night. If the other party wanted to do something to him, it would really be a case of crying out to the sky and the earth for help. I'm not here to hang out, but I came here specifically for this Dong Shilang. I spent a lot of effort to find you. Hearing the other party say this, Dong Shilang became even more nervous. What the hell? It's not an accidental encounter, but he came here specifically to find me. Doesn't a night owl come into the house for no reason? In addition to his body, what else can the other party miss? It's over, it's over. It's probably really dangerous this time. It was also his fault. He was just practicing. Why did he have to find such a secluded place? Now, what could he do if Orochimaru wanted to do something? I came here this time mainly because of the two ninjutsu developed by Dong Shilang. I am quite interested in them. Orochimaru was not surprised by the nervous Uchiha clan member opposite him. Most ninjas were nervous when they saw him. He did not try to be vague, but stated his purpose quite directly. This was also the reason why he specifically looked for him tonight. And while he was talking, he stretched out his unusual tongue and licked along the corner of his mouth. Then he put his tongue back into his mouth with a slurp. This was a habit of his. Whenever he encountered something interesting, he would always do this involuntarily. Ninjutsu? Hearing this answer, Dong Shilang finally found his IQ, was no longer overly nervous, and returned to his usual calmness. As long as he didn't grow strawberries, everything else would be fine. Senior Orochimaru is talking about Chidori and Balsam Flame Bullet. As soon as the other party mentioned the reason, he basically knew it. Since it is a ninjutsu, it can only be these two ninjutsu. However, after understanding the reason, he was a little puzzled. Just like the last time's Thunder release, Electric shock technique. As the person who developed this ninjutsu, the third Hokage directly rewarded him with the Shrike Shadow clone technique through the family. He didn't even have the interest to meet him. If it was the third Hokage who was interested in his two ninjutsu this time, he should have directly contacted the family. Why would Orochimaru come to him? Although the other party has a dream of learning all ninjutsu, this doesn't make sense. The other party should be mixed with Danzo, the fifth and a half. Now, if that's the case, it's really possible, with the other party's malice towards Uchiha, collecting the movements of Uchiha, he should be the most active one. If he is the mastermind, all this is still possible. If that's the case, recently, Uchiha has a new lightning ninjutsu, which is quite effective in dealing with the battlefield of the rock ninja and that special fire ninjutsu. I am also very interested. As he spoke, the other party once again stretched out his tongue and licked the corner of his mouth. Of course, I won't ask for your ninjutsu for nothing. I will use the corresponding ninjutsu to exchange with you. Exchange? This is not impossible. Looking at the other party's expression, Dong Shilang was basically certain that this matter was most likely related to the gloomy pot shadow. Otherwise, it wouldn't be Orochimaru who came to find him. If it was the Hokage, the other party would not ask for ninjutsu from the family ninja under normal circumstances. If so, do you also have to ask for a copy of the family's secret technique? In this case, wouldn't it create a gap between the village and a big family? No Hokage would do this. Of course, some people are inspired by the will of fire and hand over the ninjutsu they have worked hard to research to the village. The village will not refuse and will give you a good reward, but these are not necessary for Dong Shilang. Compared with the village, he is more willing to trust his family. You know, there are still many things in the family's secret vault that make him salivate, and this time, he handed over these two ninjutsu to the family, and exchanged a lot of good things from the secret vault. He was quite satisfied. As for the village, he didn't believe that there would be any good rewards that would fall on his head. I wonder if Senior Orochimaru knows about these two ninjutsu, and what ninjutsu he is going to exchange. Since Orochimaru went there in person, he couldn't refuse, but since he wanted to exchange, he also wanted to see what ninjutsu the other party would exchange. He didn't dare to think about Flying Thunder God and Impure World Reincarnation. But there are also many very good ninjutsu in the Naruto series, and he was envious. For example, the summoning technique Rashomon, the spirit transformation technique, the sealing technique, the substitute technique of Orochimaru style, the super strength technique, the perception ninjutsu, etc. A lot of ninjutsu that appeared or did not appear in TV. If he could get some in exchange, he wouldn't have any resistance. After all, he still had to sell his uncle's face. Of course, I saw these two ninjutsu in action before I came. Here are some ninjutsu I prepared. Take a look and see if there are any that interest you, Orochimaru said as he threw a scroll to Toshiro and asked him to choose two ninjutsu from it. As for these two ninjutsu, of course he had done relevant research before coming to Toshiro, and he had also seen these two ninjutsu in action with his own eyes. Even he had to admit that these two ninjutsu were quite good and had great practical value, especially the lightning release Chidori. Although it was somewhat inconsistent with the characteristics of ninja sneak attacks and concealment, it was also quite good. It was a rare powerful lightning release ninjutsu in Konoha. As for the people who performed these two ninjutsu, of course they were the Uchiha clan members on the battlefield, especially the lightning release Chidori. There were quite a few family ninjutsu with lightning in their chakra attributes who learned this ninjutsu. The purpose was to better deal with those defensive ninjutsu such as the hardening technique of the rock ninja. This attracted the attention of some interested people, which led to this meeting. Chapter 185 Replacement. He casually opened the scroll thrown by Orochimaru. After just a casual glance at the ninjutsu recorded on it, Dong Shilang shook his head. He casually threw the scroll in his hand back to Orochimaru. He never thought that the snake uncle would use such a bunch of stuff. Look at the ninjutsu recorded on it. Multiple shadow clone technique, fire style, fire dragon flame bomb, multiplication detonation talisman, water style, water rush wave. They are not as impressive as the three ninjas, You must know that you are a big guy who has mastered a lot of core technologies. You took out such common stuff, which really disappointed him, although none of these ninjutsu is lower than B level, and there is even the multiplication detonation talisman technique that shines in the original work, but none of them is suitable for him, let alone the multiple shadow clones. Will he, Uchiha, lack fire-style ninjutsu? What does he need water-style ninjutsu for? Even the only relatively eye-catching one, the multiplication of detonating talisman technique, is a ninjutsu that involves mutual destruction. He doesn't know the matching impure world reincarnation technique, so what is he doing here? To perish together with the enemy? Yes, if the multiplication of detonating talisman technique is not matched with the impure world reincarnation technique, it is simply courting death to use it rashly. This was originally developed by the second generation to allow the dead to be resurrected by the impure world reincarnation. As for the remaining ninjutsu, they are not much stronger. Oh, it seems that Toshiro-kun is not very satisfied with the ninjutsu I brought. Ha, ha. Taking the scroll from Toshiro's hand, Orochimaru narrowed his eyes and looked at Toshiro. At the same time, he stretched out his sticky, wet tongue again and licked it. At the same time, he laughed twice with his unique voice, neither yin nor yang. But as his laughter ended, the air around him solidified at this moment, and even the two bonfires in front of him seemed to become dim, and the burning flames became uncertain. Danger! A big drop of cold sweat dripped from the back of Dong Shilang's head at this time. I'm also courting death. Although this guy is not as perverted as he will be in the future, he is not easy to talk to. Dong Shilang, who was frightened and sweating, began to complain at this time. He really didn't know what was good for him. He bargained with such a guy who was obviously not normal. He really didn't know how to write the word death. Although the other party was very likely just to scare him, he didn't dare to bet whether this madman would suddenly attack him. I just think that Orochimaru-senpai has not fully understood these two ninjutsu. I won't say much about the Impatience Flame Bomb, but the Chidori ninjutsu still has many variations. For his own life, Dong Shilang had to start saving himself, hoping to use the Chidori ninjutsu to divert the other party's attention. Although many Uchiha clan members have learned the Chidori lightning release, few clan members have mastered some of the subsequent changes of this ninjutsu. I think Senior Orochimaru has never seen it. Based on the information he knew from the TV in his previous life, the other party should be very interested in ninjutsu. His words should be able to attract the other party's attention. And the fact is just as he thought. Orochimaru asked curiously, Chidori ninjutsu, is there any change that I don't know? Interesting. In this case, you can show it to me. If it is really as you said, I will give you a satisfactory ninjutsu after that. Orochimaru stared at Dong Shilang with his unusual snake eyes, waiting for the other party's performance. At the same time, he expressed that if the performance did not satisfy him, he would not mind eating the other party alive. This made Dong Shilang even more nervous. Without the slightest hesitation, he quickly formed seals with both hands and began to perform this ninjutsu invented by Kakashi. Squeak, squeak, squeak. As the ninjutsu was performed, a high-density lightning chakra gathered in Toshiro's hands, emitting dazzling lightning and accompanied by noisy bird calls. This is the most basic change of this ninjutsu. I believe Senior Orochimaru has seen it. Seeing that Orochimaru did not react, Toshiro began to control the chakra in his hand and began to change dramatically. This is Chidori Senbon. As he swung his arm, a large area of dozens of lightning chakras turned into thin and long Senbon, shooting towards the rock next to him. Swish, swish, swish. With a burst of air-breaking sounds, all these Chidori Senbon were nailed to the rock that Toshiro used as a target, and the depth of insertion reached more than 2 inches. It is not difficult to imagine what consequences would be caused if these Chidori Senbon were nailed to a person. Next is another change of his. This one is more defensive. Next, Toshiro covered up the changes of Chidori style for Orochimaru. Finally, as Dong Shiro manipulated the chakra and transformed it into a straight spear, he pierced through the stone that was only 2 or 3 meters high, and Dong Shiro's demonstration ended. His demonstration can be said to show Orochimaru all the changes of Chidori learned from the original work, except for the last thunder release Kirin. It's not that he didn't know the importance of keeping secrets and didn't have any defense against the people in the village. It's not that he was scared because Orochimaru showed some murderous intent. But after a long period of study, he found that whether it was Chidori Senbon or Chidori Sharp Spear, these two ninjutsu, if there is no strong spiritual energy, there is no way to master them. Even for Uchiha who are born with strong spiritual energy, not everyone can control the changes of this ninjutsu well. Not to mention those who are not Uchiha. Maybe there will be some geniuses with strong talents who can learn it, but he believes that such people are definitely very few. Otherwise, Hatake Kakashi in the original work would not have used the ninjutsu called Thunder Release Thunder Transmission. Isn't it because one person can't control this ninjutsu? As for the ninjutsu of Thunder Release Kirin, he is not crazy. How could he show it to Orochimaru? Besides, he doesn't know it now, unless the other party brings the Flying Thunder God technique to him. Otherwise, he will never tell the other party about this ninjutsu. He didn't even tell his family, let alone Orochimaru and the people behind him. He knew with his toes that this matter could not be done without the participation of the Star Ninja. Chapter 186, No Martial Ethics. Pa. Applause broke out here. Watching the ninjutsu demonstrated by Toshiro, Orochimaru couldn't help but stick out his scarlet, fat tongue again and licked along his lips. This was the third time he had done this since he saw Toshiro. Toshiro on the opposite side was sweating profusely. He even couldn't control his impulse and wanted to cut off the disgusting thing with a knife. Fortunately, reason stopped him from doing this, but he couldn't help but complain in his heart that this big guy's habit was really perverted. It's really a good ninjutsu. Putting away his clapping arms, Orochimaru praised softly, I really underestimated this ninjutsu called Chidori before. Apart from anything else, the extreme lightning escape nature change it represents has a lot of value. Coupled with the subsequent changes, the value of this ninjutsu has doubled. If you only use the ninjutsu in your hands to exchange for this ninjutsu, it's really a bit of a bully. This lightning ninjutsu has formed a series of ninjutsu, and it can no longer be measured by some simple attribute ninjutsu. If it is an ordinary ninja family, it is enough to regard this ninjutsu as the inherited ninjutsu of some ninja families. Not only enough, it should be said that it is not inferior to the inherited ninjutsu of most ninja families. Then, I wonder what ninjutsu Dong Shilang wants to exchange for? Since this ninjutsu is worth a lot of money, it is even more necessary to exchange it for this ninjutsu. I just don't know what ninjutsu this Uchiha genius will be interested in. He is also very curious, seeing that the pervert on the opposite side did not suddenly go crazy. Dong Shilang finally relaxed. At this time, he heard the other party's question, and he didn't hesitate to mention his request directly. I wonder if I can replace the summoning technique Rashomon. Dong Shilang can be said to have coveted this ninjutsu for a long time. If he has such a defensive ninjutsu, he will have more means when fighting against the enemy. For some powerful ninjutsu, he doesn't have to dodge everywhere. He can just use this ninjutsu to resist. Although the consumption of this ninjutsu must be not small, he doesn't have to summon the triple Rashomon at once. For general A level or even most S level ninjutsu, the first level of Rashomon is enough. Looking at the opposite side, Orochimaru, who smiled but didn't say anything, Dong Shilang couldn't help but be disappointed, knowing that there would be no such good thing. This was only after he lowered his goal again and again, he put forward this request. According to his idea, he would directly propose the Flying Thunder God technique, but he also knew that this was impossible. But he didn't expect that a high-level defensive ninjutsu would not be exchanged for him. Then, the spiritualization technique. Still silent as always, Dong Shilang, who was full of expectations, was disappointed. Although the spiritualization technique was not the ninjutsu he wanted, he intended to use this ninjutsu to explore the mystery of the soul. Now it seems that his idea is impossible to realize. It seems that Orochimaru is unlikely to exchange some high-value ninjutsu for himself. I heard that there is a secret technique called Super Beast Fake Painting in the village, which has a good effect in intelligence collection and transmission. This is my last bottom line. If even this level of ninjutsu cannot be satisfied, I think there is no need to start this ninjutsu exchange. In the end, Dong Shilang had to put forward his own request, although this ninjutsu was not what he wanted most. However, this ninjutsu still has a certain effect in some aspects of intelligence collection, transmission, search, and escape. At the same time, there is no way to directly enhance one's own combat effectiveness. I think the other party should not refuse. As for the other ninjutsu, I want to change it too. He told Orochimaru all his requirements in one breath, and then looked at the other party quietly, waiting for his reply. At the same time, he secretly accumulated strength. Once the other party made any improper moves, he was ready to burst out with all his strength and deal with the other party properly. He didn't believe it. He had worked hard for so many years, but he couldn't get through a few moves under the other party's hands. No matter what, it was impossible for the other party to kill him instantly. As long as he makes some noise when he does it, he will be basically safe. After all, he still has the title of Uchiha, and the other party still has to be cautious. When Orochimaru heard Dong Shilang's request, he didn't say whether it was good or bad, but just stared at Dong Shilang without saying anything. The atmosphere here fell into dead silence. There were only the crackling sounds of the bonfire burning, and some faint roars of beasts and chirping of insects coming from the nearby forest. Suddenly, Dong Shilang opened his Sharingan, and 3 black magatama in his scarlet eyes began to rotate at a high speed. His whole body was tense, and his body was slightly bent, like a cheetah ready to explode at any time. Just waiting for a signal, he would burst out all his strength. Ha, 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 you are really a genius. I agree to your conditions. I will give you these 2 ninjutsu later. Before he finished speaking, the other party's whole figure began to slowly sink to the ground. Senior Orochimaru, you are too kind. Compared with a strong man like you, I am still far behind. Staring at the figure of the other party who was about to disappear, Dong Shilang did not dare to be careless. He never thought that the other party would use illusions on him. If it were not for his unusually abundant spiritual energy and the fact that he became particularly stable due to long-term meditation practice, he might not be able to discover the other party's means just now. Even if he finally discovered the illusion cast by the other party, he was very fortunate. Otherwise, thinking about the fate after being abducted by Orochimaru, he would be horrified. At the same time, in his heart, he began to complain crazily. This dead pervert really has no martial ethics. Fortunately, when facing this guy, he has always been cautious and dared not be careless. Think about the filial son who jumped off the cliff because of the other party's words life is meaningless, and Kimimaro, Honglian, etc. All of them risked their lives for this guy. It can only be said that he is worthy of being a life mentor. Hey, I look forward to meeting you again. I hope that by then, Winter Lion Sama won't let me down. Chapter 187 Ult. No response. He was not moved by the disappearance of Orochimaru. Dong Shiro just opened his eyes wide and kept looking around. He was afraid that he would miss some clues and be plotted against by Orochimaru again. It seems that he is really gone, seeing that there was no movement nearby for a long time and he did not find anything wrong. Dong Shiro was finally sure that Orochimaru was no longer nearby. This person's aura is really cold, recalling the murderous intent that the other party had just revealed. Even though it had been a long time, the other party's indifference, coldness, and ruthlessness still made Dong Shiro's hair stand up like a stress response. And the other party said before leaving that he was looking forward to meeting again. Goddamn expectation. This kind of pervert should go to see the Six Paths sage as soon as possible. With the degree of perversion of this guy, it is estimated that this is difficult to achieve. He hastily ended his generosity this time. Dong Shiro felt that his own camp was safer after being approached by this person. At the same time, he couldn't stop complaining in his heart. This time, Orochimaru really took advantage of him. He didn't expect that he didn't get to take advantage of him after traveling through time. Instead, he got to take advantage of him. Who can he go to for justice? Damn it. Or I'm not strong enough. Otherwise, I wouldn't be so embarrassed this time. Orochimaru, right? He has remembered this grudge. When there is a chance in the future, he must pay the price. It was also bad luck for Dong Shilang. Originally, this time, A strong man like Orochimaru didn't need to find Dong Shilang, who let the root member who reported the information to the Nabokage exaggerate the information when he saw this amazing lightning ninjutsu, and then let Orochimaru, who was listening to the report with Danzo, hear it. Then, one of the three ninjas who was very interested in ninjutsu, volunteered to take the task of getting detailed information on the other party's ninjutsu. Even this method of replacing ninjutsu was a method that the other party came up with before he died. It was because Toshiro was an Uchiha that he was still cautious, otherwise, there would not be so much trouble. As for those ninjutsu, he knew the attitude of the village very well. Although he disagreed with it, he did not mean to go against the village policy. He was very careful in selecting them before handing them over to Toshiro. If it were not for the fact that his Chidori had some interesting changes in the eyes of Orochimaru, which aroused his interest, Toshiro would have to change it. Don't think that the name of Uchiha can protect Toshiro's safety. Early in the morning of the second day, just after completing today's routine training, someone notified him to come to the tent of the chief of the Shigeyama clan. I wonder what the chief wants to see me about. Entering the tent located in the center of the Uchiha camp, Toshiro asked, looking at Uchiha Shigeyama sitting on the main seat with the light coming in from the window. Compared with the time when he was in the family before, Uchiha Shigeyama's appearance at this time can be said to have changed a lot. Not only did his complexion become more gloomy, but even his previously jet-black temples also became a little gray. This was not the biggest change. The biggest change on the other person was his eyes. Compared to before, his entire left eye was tightly closed at this time. Such an abrupt change made Dong Shilang murmur a little. Looking at the other person's situation, did he perform a forbidden technique like Izanagi? But he quickly rejected it, because from the original work, it seems that if you want to perform a forbidden technique like Izanagi, you need the Meixiang Sharingan to perform it. Otherwise, it is like Danzo, using the cells of the first generation and 3 Magatama to perform this ninjutsu. But in this way, he couldn't guess whether the other party opened the Meixiang or used some other taboo method. What kind of father, what kind of son? Thinking of Uchiha Fugaku in the original work, who never showed his Meixiang in front of his clan members until his death, Dong Shilang couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. These two are really from the same lineage. Toshiro, I wonder how you got in touch with Orochimaru? He gave 2 ninjutsu to the family and asked us to give them to you. Looking at his brother's subordinate in the tent, Uchiha Shigeyama was also a little curious. How did he get in touch with Orochimaru? Orochimaru even gave him 2 ninjutsu. Well, it's mainly because Senior Orochimaru is a little interested in the 2 ninjutsu I developed, so he found me last night and wanted to exchange. To his surprise, Orochimaru actually let the family intervene in this. This operation confused him. He didn't know what the other party wanted to do. Or did the other party have some deep meaning in it? Is that all? Uchiha Shigeyama was a little disappointed with Toshiro's answer. It seems that the connection between the two is just like this. It is far from what he hoped. Yes, although he was confused, he still answered the other party's question honestly. This time Toshiro was really confused. The other party didn't care at all that he had leaked the 2 ninjutsu. Instead, he was concerned about the connection between him and Orochimaru, which really made him confused. Shouldn't the other party's focus be on the 2 ninjutsu? If there is a chance, you can deepen your connection with Orochimaru. If you need anything, you can come to me directly. Fuck, what is the family doing? Getting on good terms with Orochimaru? Do they think that I am too lively and annoying? Or do they think that Orochimaru's laboratory materials are not enough and want to add me? And he is sure that if he gets close to Orochimaru, sooner or later, he will become a corpse on the other party's laboratory table. Even his eyes will probably be soaked in a special potion jar by the other party as a good research material. You have to know that the other party has not yet completed the immortal reincarnation technique that can take over other people's bodies. It is impossible to make a comeback like Naibashi. When he thought of this end, Dong Shilang was not feeling well. Compared to getting along well with Orochimaru, he would rather face those Iwagakure ninjas. At least they were real swordsmen, fighting him to the death. Even if he was not as skilled as them, he would accept it. But Orochimaru, Chapter 188, Supernatural Power. Seeing Dong Shilang's doubts, Uchiha Shigeyama did not explain. Instead, he handed the two ninjutsu scrolls in his hand to Dong Shilang. Looking at the two ninjutsu that he had exchanged for at a loss, Dong Shilang did not open the two scrolls here to check. Instead, he prepared to say goodbye directly. One more thing. But before Dong Shilang could say goodbye, Uchiha Shigeyama, who looked a little disappointed, spoke again and interrupted Dong Shilang's plan. As we stabilize the defense line of the grass country, the war inevitably enters a stalemate stage. Although there will still be battles in the front camp, the intensity will inevitably decrease. Although large-scale battles have become less, the conflicts between the intelligence and sabotage teams of both sides have become increasingly greater. The village requires us Uchiha to form some small and medium-sized teams to join this infiltration war between the two sides. At this point, Uchiha Shigeyama deliberately paused, wanting to see Dong Shilang's reaction, but the result was destined to disappoint him, and Dong Shilang's face had no expression. He only heard the words of the head of the clan Changshan, and he basically knew what the other party was going to say next. The clan is willing to let you lead some clan members of similar age to join. It's not that Uchiha Changshan doesn't know how to protect the younger generation of his clan, but they really can't spare more manpower at this time. If a large number of adult clan members are withdrawn, the family's defense line will become more dangerous. Such consequences are really unacceptable, and facing the order of the village, he has no good way to refuse. Sure enough, hearing this, Dong Shilang was not surprised at all. Since he has entered the sight of some people, it is impossible to hide. It's just that he didn't expect that the other party's means would come so quickly. After only one night, he had to join the cruel infiltration war. Like this kind of infiltration between ninjas, an anti-infiltration war, it can be said that it is the task that ninjas are most reluctant to accept in the entire camp. 3 or 5 teams, scattered on such a large-scale ninja battlefield, can hardly make any bubbles. Once any flaw is revealed, the hostile ninjas around will rush over like piranhas smelling blood, one after another, in groups, and will not give up until they tear a piece of meat from your body or swallow it whole. Needless to say, it must be the idea of that old guy Danzo. This time the arrangement came so quickly, it seems that the other party is quite important to me. I know, then I'll take my leave first. Although he had already cursed in his heart, Dong Shilang also knew that there was no way to complain, so he could only accept this task with a pinch of his nose. It was just like eating a dead fly in his heart. Disgusting to death, not to mention how awkward it was. Although the family has no way to directly refuse this mission, it has also bought you half a month of preparation time. I hope you. Just when Dong Shilang was about to leave directly, the head of the Changshan clan spoke again, but he couldn't say it anymore. As an old ninja, he knew how cruel those infiltration wars were. Even some adult ninjas couldn't accept it. Now they were sending a group of children from the family to that kind of quagmire. As the clan leader, he couldn't say anything. But in the past few days, he had sent away too many family members. Even if the family wanted to protect them, they were powerless. Thank you for your kindness, clan leader. I will come back alive. After nodding to express his gratitude, Dong Shilang left the tent without looking back. In the next period of time, he had to prepare well, otherwise, this time it would be really bad. From the slightly dim tent, he looked at the figure that disappeared in the sunlight after the curtain was lifted. Feeling the vigor of the other party when he went out, Uchiha Shigeyama began to talk to himself at this time. Perhaps, it is time for me to transform into flames and practice my own will of fire. The current head of the Uchiha clan watched his family members and juniors go away and never come back because of this war. Now even the juniors in the family have to go to die, and they have become older and older. At the same time, he made a decision in his heart. In fact, Dong Shilang didn't know that when he asked about the relationship between Dong Shilang and Orochimaru just now. He hoped that through Orochimaru, the village would give his family a chance to breathe. Otherwise, with the current situation of the family, it would not take too long before they would send those younger and younger clansmen to the battlefield. As for coveting the position of Hokage through Orochimaru, Uchiha Shigeyama at this time did not think so far ahead. Finally, I didn't fool myself with some fake stuff. He returned to the tent, unfolded the 2 scrolls that Elder Shigeyama gave him, and began to check the contents of the 2 scrolls. One of the 2 ninjutsu was secret technique super beast fake painting. In Dong Shilang's opinion, this ninjutsu was nothing special in terms of combat, and it didn't seem to increase his own strength much. It was only unique in some auxiliary aspects, and this mission was the time when this ninjutsu could be used. As for the other ninjutsu, Dong Shilang chose a ninjutsu that could enhance his physical skills to a certain extent. He didn't think of the 8 gates of ninjutsu. If a ninja didn't put all his heart and soul into that kind of ninjutsu, he wouldn't have much achievement at all. Ninjutsu super strength technique was only a physical technique, so it was only rated as an A-level ninjutsu, which was the second ninjutsu Dong Shilang chose. Although he might not be able to adapt to Tsunade's fighting style, just learning this ninjutsu would be enough to save him in a critical moment. At the same time, he had various unknown ideas in his mind, hoping to get a glimpse of some of the mysteries of the sage body through this ninjutsu. It is obviously impossible to infer the sage body from some of the requirements for the use of this ninjutsu, or some of the characteristics in the application, but just understanding some of the characteristics, I think there is no big problem. As for whether he can learn it without the blood of the 1,000 hands, he doesn't think that even if Nizuzi's wife and children can learn it, he can't learn it. Chapter 189, Rejoice. The drizzle kept falling. It was as if there was a hole in the sky. It would never end. It was not even 6 o'clock in the evening, but the dark clouds in the sky had dimmed the light of the entire land. This was the border between the land of grass and the land of rain. It was also the front line of the battle between Konoha and Rock Ninja, and small-scale forces. In this land, it can be said that ninjas from both sides fought each other almost every moment. The losers left behind corpses, or were annihilated, or fled in panic, and the winners were not much better. Even if they had the upper hand in the fight, the opponent's dying struggle before death, or the power that burst out to create life for their companions, would always cause themselves a lot of trouble. In a primeval forest, there were many giant trees that could be hugged by several people. Each tree was like an open umbrella, blocking most of the dense drizzle in the sky. On a clearing in the forest, there were corpses lying one after another, as well as messy land nearby and red puddles on the land. All of them showed people that a fierce battle had just happened here, and from the forehead guards with leaf patterns worn by those who were cleaning up the mess, it was shown that the winner of this battle belonged to the Konoha side. At this time, a figure who was squatting on the ground and covering his companions with green light stood up. The man, who was about 170 centimeters tall when he stood up, tied his long hair into a neat single ponytail. The bangs on his forehead were wet by the rain and stuck tightly to his cheeks, looking messy and dirty. He was wearing an ordinary green vest, which was no longer bloated, but instead looked unusually fit. If it weren't for the cold expression on his face, which destroyed his temperament, just relying on his handsome appearance, I believe there will be many girls who will regard him as their dream lover. Just clean up now. If we delay for a while, those rock ninjas will probably catch up like mad dogs again. Yes, Captain. Without a moment's delay, all the people on guard, those who were cleaning up the mess, and those who were resting for the wounded stood up and ran towards the depths of the forest with the captain. Without any instructions, the followers began to automatically divide into several teams. 2 people followed the captain in front of the team to open the way, 3 people hung at the back of the team, and the other 6 people were on the left and right sides of the team. Everyone formed a group of 3 and tacitly protected the wounded in the middle. At the same time, the distance between each team varied from hundreds of meters. The leader of this team was the 14-year-old Uchiha Toshiro. It had been nearly 2 years since he last met Orochimaru. During this period, he had been engaged in infiltration and counter-infiltration tasks. Almost every few days, he had to fight with the rock ninjas. Maybe he would return to the camp to recuperate for a while due to injuries and other reasons. However, as soon as his injury gets better, there will be a task in the camp for him. Let him and his team run around. The long-term fighting has made his temperament cold and murderous. In the past 2 years, not only the rock ninja died in their hands, from time to time, his fellow tribesmen were also killed by these rock ninjas. Although his strength is incomparable to before, it is not invincible. In this cruel land, he can only protect himself while doing his best to protect most of his fellow tribesmen. There are always some tribesmen who cannot adapt to the battlefield. Because of various mistakes, they leave their young lives here. Yes, young tribesmen. The companions he leads now are all Uchiha young people around 10 years old. For a long time, there have been tribesmen who have been added to his team to fill those vacancies. For example, now, there are 3 8-year-old fellow tribesmen in his team, acting with them. As for the remaining tribesmen, they were not that old. The oldest ones were him, Longyuo, and Zhaoxia. Including him, there were 5 people in total. Each of them led a team of 3 people and survived hard on this battlefield. After almost an hour of traveling in the rain, they finally arrived near a cave before dark. After closing his eyes and sensing it slightly, Dong Shilang confirmed that there was basically no one inside, and he felt relieved. It seems that this stronghold has not been discovered by the enemy. Even so, Dong Shilang did not act rashly, but instead separated a shadow clone and went into the cave to check. Seeing the safety signal sent by his shadow clone, Dong Shilang finally relaxed at this time. It seems that he can have a good rest tonight, leading the way into this hidden cave with a fairly large area. Feeling the cold water vapor on his body and the uncontrollable trembling of some of his fellow tribesmen behind him, Dong Shilang quickly took out a sealing scroll from his backpack behind him. He took out his specially customized natural gas heating device, raised a flame, and started to warm his companions behind him. At this time, the shadow clone that Dong Shilang had created in advance was not directly removed, but he took out another scroll that Dong Shilang was carrying and began to write and draw on it. Not long after, dozens of sparrows, moths, snakes and rats flew out of the unfolded scroll. Some flapped their wings and flew, while others ran and twisted out of the cave and scattered around. These ninjutsu created with the fake paintings of super beasts will serve as their warning. If no one comes to disturb them tonight, they can have a good sleep. Of course, the shadow clone is an exception. He has to maintain this ninjutsu all night, otherwise, without anyone to control it, these ninjutsu will probably be washed away by the rain outside in a short time. Dong Shilang was extremely fortunate that when he traded with Orochimaru, he chose this ninjutsu that appeared in the original work. Although this ninjutsu didn't help much in combat, it helped him a lot in reconnaissance, surveillance, searching, and even running away. If it weren't for this ninjutsu, he didn't know if he could live safely until now. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190 Shizui. You guys, go and recover your body heat first, I'll help you treat your wounds later. At this time, several tribesmen who had lost a lot of blood due to being in the rain for a long time and their own injuries were already beginning to be unable to hold on. Hearing Dong Shilang's order, everyone showed joy on their faces and began to warm up around the heater. Among them, the 2 tribesmen who were only 8 years old were the most seriously injured. At this time, their faces were already blue from the cold. If they were not allowed to have a good rest, they would probably get seriously ill early tomorrow morning. Asaka, you prepare the food, I'll go to the back to prepare some hot water, and everyone will go and wash up simply later. Yes, no problem, thank you for your hard work again. After responding, Uchiha Asaka began to prepare food for tonight without showing any surprise. She was no longer surprised that Dong Shilang took out natural gas for heating and prepared hot water. Even the dehydrated vegetables in his hand were prepared by the other party. She was numb. Some individual and more open-minded ninja teams would prepare things like natural gas heating equipment and dehydrated vegetables. But during the mission, preparing hot water to wash your companions was basically unique. Senior, you will use medical ninjutsu to treat Gyujin and Nana later, and you will also have shadow clones on duty at night. Is it really okay to consume chakra like this? At this time, The little kid, who was also only 8 years old, but compared to his two peers, he did not suffer any injuries in the fight just now, asked with some doubts. Although the other party was a famous genius in the family, he had just experienced a fight, plus the current consumption. It was fine to treat companions and be on duty at night, but it was a bit wasteful to prepare hot water and so on. Shizui, instead of worrying about this freak, you might as well worry about your companions. I have been teaming up with this guy for such a long time, and the number of times this guy has used up all his chakra is rare. Put your heart back in your stomach. Uchiha Asako was putting the dehydrated vegetables, dried meat, seasonings and other things in his hands into a marching pot and cooking them one by one. At this time, he smiled and said to the little boy with slightly curly hair and a signature bun nose, "Is Senior Toshiro so strong?" It's amazing hearing the explanation of the little sister of the same clan who took good care of him. Uchiha Shizui, who was only 8 years old, looked at Toshiro's back with envy. After a short contact, this senior of the same clan named Uchiha Toshiro left a deep impression on him. The other party is not only powerful, but also has dabbled in almost all aspects related to ninjas. If it were just that, it would be fine. There are not many ninjas who know a little bit of everything in the ninja world, but there are some. However, most of them have not achieved much because of their scattered energy. But Senior Dong Shilang is different. He is not only knowledgeable, but also proficient in all aspects after just a few days of contact. Even the amount of chakra, one of the most important criteria for measuring a ninja's strength, is so excellent, which really surprised him. Dong Shilang, who was preparing hot water at the innermost part of the cave, heard the conversation between Kaoxia and Shizui, but he didn't care. Although he was a little surprised that the other party would come to his team, he didn't take it too seriously. Although the other party will be very powerful in the future, he is just an 8-year-old kid now. Just keep a normal mind and don't pay too much attention to him. As for his own chakra amount, as he has been using fairy chakra to activate his body for many years, his chakra amount has doubled and skyrocketed. Especially after he turned 12, his body began to develop further, and the growth momentum of his chakra surprised him. Sometimes, he would just sleep and have a good rest, and when he woke up the next day, he could feel the increase of his chakra. This also made him not be as stingy in using chakra as before, just like now. Earth style, earth and stone wall. He formed a seal and performed an earth style ninjutsu, creating a chakra creation on the ground that was about 2 by 2 and only 60 to 70 centimeters high, similar to a stone wall. Water style, water bullet technique. Then he used the water bullet technique to fill this freshly baked bathtub, and then placed his hands on the water surface. Not long after, a pool of hot water with a suitable temperature was ready. It's not that Dong Shilang was hypocritical and had to spend chakra to prepare hot water for a bath during this war. It's just that he felt that most of his teammates were nervous because they were performing higher-risk tasks for a long time. If he didn't find a way to let them relax properly, their condition would continue to decline. Moreover, this decline in status will become more and more serious as time goes by. This is a bit of a headache. As their captain, Dong Shilang, who had been thinking hard for a long time, finally came up with such a method, hoping to ease the tense nerves of his teammates. Of course, he still understands the principle of knowing when to stop. He would not do this unless he was in a safe place and was on guard. And the temperature of the hot water cannot be too high. Otherwise it would really be like taking a hot spring bath, right? In this way, if there is any accident, how can these people fight when they are soaked in hot water and become weak all over? If such a thing really happens, it is estimated that this group of people will become the laughingstock of the entire ninja world. The reputation of Uchiha is probably going to be ruined because of them. As for why he can use water and earth attribute ninjutsu, he just tried it a little at the beginning, and he used these two attributes of ninjutsu very smoothly. The process was so smooth that it was a bit beyond his expectations. And as time passed, he could clearly feel that whether it was the fire, thunder, wind he originally had or the water and earth he mastered later, the 5 attributes of chakra began to become easier and easier to control. In his previous life, his affinity with the 5 attributes had made great progress. Even the power of his ninjutsu had changed and was becoming stronger and stronger. Chapter 191 Questions. Looking at what he had done, Dong Shilang made a seal again, controlled the water flow, and formed a water ball with a diameter of less than 1 meter. After adding some things to the water ball, he controlled the water ball and slowly rotated it downward along his head. He gave himself a simple Washington, and the things he added to the water ball were the toiletries he prepared. They were used when he used this water-style shampoo technique during the mission. He simply washed himself, controlled his chakra, took away some of the moisture in his clothes, and then sat by the fire to keep warm. It's really convenient to have abundant chakra. Seeing his operation, Uchiha Yen, who was not surprised, said with some envy, "They don't have the conditions to use these ninjutsu like Dong Shilang. Although they are all some simple D-level ninjutsu, they, the ordinary people, will still consume some physical strength. This kind of unnecessary consumption is also unacceptable to them." "Okay, stop saying weird things here. You and Koxia take Nana and the others to wash up first. After we finish eating, I will help her check her injuries." The little girl named Uchiha Nana was injured even though she was not a newcomer on the battlefield. It was her first time to carry out such a dangerous mission behind enemy lines with them. Yes, let's go first. Ignore these guys. She went to wash up with these female companions first. At the end, she didn't forget to say, "You are not allowed to peek." While saying this, she also looked at all the male companions present fiercely. Just from her eyes, you can read her meaning, as if to say, "Why are you still staying here? There is no way. This is a temporary place after all." Although the place for washing up is in the corner and there are things to cover it, some sounds will always come over uncontrollably. But everyone is not very old. Only the 3 boys, Dong Shilang, Z, and Long Yuo, are a little older. But, hurry up! Dong Shilang, who had just sat down to rest, had to get up again and take his companions out of the cave. Fortunately, time was urgent. It only took 10 minutes for the girls to finish the job. The dehydrated vegetables of this family are not good, and the jerky this time was a little overcooked. "Senior Dong Shilang, I heard that the Lightning Country has also joined the war?" Dong Shilang, who was holding a lunch box and eating the food in the bowl, thinking about whether to change the purchase of supplies, heard the question from Shizui across from him. "Yes, you care about these things." "I just care about the trend of the war and hope that the war can end soon." After hearing Dong Shilang's words, Shizui just answered Dong Shilang's question and began to fall into deep thought. He was still thinking for a long time, and even forgot to eat the food in his hand. The war between the Fire Country and the Earth Country, these two great powers, has started for 2 years. The land of Earth had no way to defeat the Konoha ninjas in front of them, and Konoha was also unable to drive the Rock ninjas back to their hometown. The two sides were deadlocked. As a result, the various ninja villages that had been closely following the direction of this war began to stir. The Land of Lightning was just the first to end. As far as Tawashiro knew, not only the Land of Lightning, but even the Land of Water in the east had taken action. Their ninjas often came here to collect intelligence. God knows what these people are thinking. This is an inland area. These mist ninjas came all the way here to collect intelligence. They really took great pains. As for the Land of Lightning, they had been waiting silently for nearly 2 years. If they didn't make a move, it would be amazing. They landed directly across the sea, using the Frost Country and the Field Country as their bridgeheads, and began to clash with Konoha and Rock ninjas. This made the situation on this battlefield even more chaotic. From time to time, there would be a 3-way melee between Konoha, Rock Ninja, and Cloud Ninja. Don't think too much, just eat. It's almost cold. These things are not something you, a kid, can figure out. Looking at this future instant body Shizui, Dong Shilang did not expect that the other party, at this age, has already started to pay attention to these things. It's completely different from his two peers. "Senior, why do you think there is a war? Why do people fight each other endlessly? Can't we live in peace?" I just kindly reminded him, but I didn't expect him to ask me so many questions. These geniuses in the family are really troublesome. Your question, how should I answer? Not only Uchiha Shizui, but even those clansmen who were eating, at this time, They all slowed down their movements, one by one, with their ears erect and their pairs of black eyes open. They looked at Dong Shilang curiously. He looked so eager to learn that Toshiro felt embarrassed not to answer. Shizui, you are the genius of the family. Have you ever thought about how many secret medicines you have used and how much meat and vegetables you have eaten to grow so strong? Have you ever thought about where these precious medicinal materials, vegetables and fruits, cattle, sheep and seafood come from? No. But what does this have to do with war? Hearing Toshiro's words, not only Shizui, but even Uchiha Hamura and the others beside him were puzzled. In their traditional concepts and the propaganda of the village, isn't war caused by the continuous accumulation of hatred between each other, which slowly broke out? Shizui, you have to know that a person has to consume the resources of this world from the moment he is born. An ordinary person will die of thirst if he does not drink water for 3 days, and will starve to death if he does not eat for 7 days. Those who are capable can eat meat and fish every day, and have countless slaves to help them plow the fields and graze, and they can reap the benefits. And those ordinary people at the bottom of the society also want to live this kind of good life, letting others work for them, and they only need to enjoy themselves. But with the current productivity, the number of non-productive people that the entire world can support is limited. Those non-productive people who are either capable or have resources will suppress those ordinary people in order to allow their descendants to live the same life as themselves from generation to generation. Contradictions begin to accumulate unconsciously. And then one day, they will suddenly erupt because of some insignificant things. Chapter 192. Long Speech. Senior, what you mean is, the outbreak of the war is because of resources. And those ordinary people? But what does this war have to do with them? Isn't this a war between ninjas? Hearing Dong Shilang's long speech, Uchiha Shizui was even more confused. For a moment, he couldn't understand what Dong Shilang said. If the war broke out just because of the competition for resources, he could understand it to some extent. But what could those ordinary people have to do with this war? With the education he received and his own shallow experience, he really couldn't understand what Dong Shilang said. Although these ordinary people have a certain amount of money and power, these things have a certain influence on ninjas, but the role they play should be limited. How come they can still influence the direction of this war when it comes to the senior? He really couldn't understand. This is also the failure of ninja education, or it should be said to be the success, which is to train these ninjas into qualified tools. In order to achieve this goal, some related subjects such as history, society, and philosophy are completely fooling people, or they don't exist at all. All these ninjas are seriously biased in their studies, and they only know how to fight and kill. From Dong Shilang's perspective, the setting of the ninja world is really confusing. If the ninjas here were like those in some of his previous life's immortality novels, wholeheartedly pursuing immortality and collecting tributes from some countries, he could understand it. But in this world, the ninjas who possess extraordinary powers do not pursue immortality. It's fine, they are actually influenced by daimyo, nobles, and wealthy merchants for some mercenary money. It's simply crazy. That's fine, but they are still fighting and killing while pursuing peace. It's simply sick. After living in this world for so many years, he can only say that the ninja world is too involuted. Although ninjas cannot be said to be everywhere, there are ninja villages everywhere, even wandering ninjas, ninjas from other countries, and so on in all countries. And those daimyo and so on should have reached a certain tacit understanding and formed an unspoken rule. 1. But if there are ninjas who don't follow the rules, they will hire hostile ninjas to kill these unruly ninjas. In order to maintain their own status in the final analysis, the hatred between the ninjas of the major countries is too deep. It is almost impossible to simply sit down and turn enemies into friends. And all of this has to go back to the starting point of the ninja. It was because of the partiality of the Six Paths sage that Indra and Ashura were at odds. They fought from the era of the ninja clan to before the establishment of Konoha, and the ninja group was torn apart. Of course, the instigation of Black Zetsu is indispensable. Originally, as the elder brother, Indra has been trained as the heir for so many years, and there is nothing wrong with that. Although he is a little cold and domineering, it is just a different leadership style. You have to be partial, saying that your younger brother is more caring, more suitable to inherit your position, and better guide the world towards peace. If you could be ruthless and abolish or imprison this abandoned prince, there wouldn't be so many troubles later, but you just couldn't do it. This set of rhetoric, if it was the prince of that dynasty, would be able to bear it. No doubt, he brought his followers and fought a 1,000-year war with his younger brother. When he was about to die, not completely, he also sent a suicide note to his eldest son, hoping to mediate, but in the end, he was taken advantage of by Black Zetsu. He was so stupid. From Kaguya to the Six Paths Sage, to Indra and Ashura, the family's various mysterious operations made Toshiro not know how to complain. Yes, but not all. Those daimyos and nobles, either because of their own domestic conflicts, or to consume the country's excess population, or fear the existence of ninjas, support the ninjas to launch the Ninja World War again and again. All this is just the appearance of war. Appearance? Hearing this, Shizui's expression became more and more incomprehensible. He couldn't help but say the doubts in his heart. Yes, the war of ninjas is just a superficial phenomenon. Even if there were no ninjas, the war would still break out. It's just that the people who carried out the war were not ninjas. What really caused the war to break out was human beings themselves, the greed and desire in their hearts. As long as power, strength, money, beauty, food and all the things that they desire in their hearts still exist, the occurrence of war is inevitable. Speaking of this, Dong Shilang was also a little absent-minded. Whether it was this ninja world or his previous life, wasn't it like this? Although he didn't quite understand what Senior Dong Shilang said, Uchiha Shizui, who had been extremely intelligent since childhood, felt that what the other party said seemed to be the root cause of the war. This made him very desperate, because according to what Senior Dong Shilang said, there was no way to eliminate war. As long as humans still exist in this world, as long as they still have emotions, can think, and have needs, wars will continue to repeat because of human desires, over and over again without end. The only difference is that the people who started the war have changed. What is the essential difference between what is happening now? These are not things that a kid of your age should consider. You should eat well and grow up quickly. When you are older and stronger, you can use your own eyes to take a good look at this world and use your own personal experience to distinguish the reality of this world. Looking at Shizui, who became a little distracted because of his words, Dong Shilang touched the kid's head and interrupted his thoughts. This kind of thing is not something an 8-year-old kid should think about, even if it was Dong Shilang's previous life. In order to prevent the occurrence of war, didn't countless great men fail? After a casual reminder, Dong Shilang didn't care too much about how much impact his remarks would have on Shizui, who was only 8 years old. He finished the food in his bowl in a few bites and began to clean up the backpack behind him. He still had to treat those tribesmen whose wounds had not fully healed later. There was still a lot to do. Chapter 193 Misery. The next morning, after a whole day and night of rain, it finally stopped. The sky also showed a hint of white at the right time. After a whole night of rest, the people in the team basically recovered well, except for a few people. For example, Uchiha Shizui. At this time, he had a pair of big dark circles under his eyes. He was absent-minded when eating breakfast and looked lost. It was obvious that he was disturbed by Tawashiru's remarks last night and did not rest well. Tawashiru, are you going there alone this time? Uchiha Tetsu asked Tawashiru, who was wearing a large cloak that could cover his whole body and had a hood. Well, I'll go alone. You guys be careful. If there's any emergency, just send a signal and I'll come over soon. Dong Shilang, who was originally going to go to the destination alone according to the original plan, saw Uchiha Shizui in a sleepwalking state at this time, and immediately changed his mind and said, "Shizui, come with me, it's good to see more." While saying this, he took out an identical cloak and threw it to Shizui, indicating that he should put it on. Seeing the question in the other person's eyes, Dong Shilang did not answer immediately, but smiled mysteriously and kept it a secret. Not only Dong Shilang, but Evans, Yan and others showed the same expression, looking at Uchiha Shizui with a face full of question marks. As if you will know when you go there. It should be said that the training of the village's ninjas is still very successful. Faced with the captain's completely incomprehensible request, he did not continue to explore, but began to put it on without saying a word. However, this large cloak, matched with his petite figure, seemed unusually loose and bulky. Even though he had used some special methods to make his height look no different from that of an adult, from a distance, it still looked funny. But Dong Shilang didn't ask for too much. After the other party finished dressing, Dong Shilang threw a bottle of special potion into Shizui's arms and asked him to apply it himself. Then he turned around and took Shizui to a deserted village in the distance. Shizui played the role of a subordinate very well. After seeing that Dong Shilang had no intention of solving his doubts, he followed him without hesitation. As the distance got closer, this abandoned village revealed his unknown side. Feeling the eyes that swept over him from time to time, Shizui didn't say anything on the surface, but the doubts in his heart were getting bigger and bigger. He didn't know that this abandoned village that seemed to have no one staying from a distance, under this deserted appearance, there were still some unknown secrets. Just getting close would attract so many inquiring eyes. The following scenes shocked him greatly. He was only 8 years old and kind-hearted. He had never thought that such a tragic thing would happen in this abandoned corner. As they went deeper, they came to the central area here. Rows of sparse shops were open for business. From time to time, there would be 1 or 2 pedestrians dressed similarly to the 2 of them, both wearing wide cloaks to cover their whole bodies, going in and out of these shops. The goods in those shops were also varied. Antiques, food, firearms, medicinal materials, or kunai shuriken used by ninjas, etc. Even detonating talismans and large crossbows used by ninjas were sold here. What he could not accept the most was that the goods sold in several individual shops were actually living humans. I don't know if it was intentional or unintentional, but Senior Dong Shilang took him around these places and even went in to talk to the boss to understand the market. This gave him a general understanding of the prices of these goods. The most expensive ones were those girls who were 13 or 14 years old and had delicate looks. The second most expensive ones were those young and strong men, and then those women who were slightly older. However, these people usually brought 1 or 2 children with them, so they were not very popular. As for the old and weak who were alone, he did not see any of them. He heard from Senior Dong Shilang that these people had basically disappeared on the road automatically. As for the so-called disappearance, the senior did not explain it in detail to him, but just left him with a meaningful look. Although he did not see it with his own eyes, he only thought about it for a while and he already understood what the so-called disappearance meant in the mouth of the senior. This also made the young him become more and more taciturn, and then he could only mechanically follow behind Senior Dong Shilang and silently observe everything here. After walking around in this black market for a while, Dong Shilang took the dumbfounded Shizui into a shop that did not look very big. After his observation, it was very likely that this was a place where some local forces of the grass country gathered to collect some supplies. Ignoring the clerk who was trying to sell him a beautiful young woman, he directly handed a seal scroll to the middle-aged man who was smoking in the store. In Dong Shilang's perception, this middle-aged man with a medium build, wearing an ordinary black kimono and a sad face, had a chakra reaction close to that of a special jonin. Judging from the attitude of those women who were used as goods, they seemed very familiar with him. Dong Shilang judged that the 2 sides should have known each other for a long time, but they were forced to do so by life. At the same time, he was also sighing. The more chaotic the place, the easier it is for such things to happen. For example, the beautiful young woman just now. The other party's figure and appearance are quite good, but the baby in her arms makes her not very popular, and with a baby still in her arms, she, a woman, especially a woman with some beauty, cannot live in this chaotic country. She can only turn herself into a commodity, hoping to get protection from others with her beauty, and the only requirement is that the other party can let her not abandon the child. If she didn't do this, not only she, but also her child, might not survive for more than a month and would become a dead bone on the roadside. This is the tragedy of being a citizen of a small country, and he couldn't help him at all. Chapter 194 Black Market. You leave first, you worthless person. Yes. Seeing the sealed scroll thrown by Dong Shilang, the middle-aged man with the vicissitudes of life shouted out the clerk who had been following Dong Shilang since he entered the store. He knew that since the other party could take out such a thing, this time it would not be a small business. He raised his hand to pick up the scroll in his hand and was ready to open it on the spot, but after looking at Dong Shilang, he stood up and walked to the back of the store. "Shizui, you stay outside." "Yes." Without much hesitation, Dong Shilang followed behind him and went to the back room of the store. The things in the scroll were really not suitable to be displayed in public. Even if the store owner did not take the initiative to avoid it, he would remind him. "Unlock." After taking Dong Shilang to an empty room with nothing but a huge table, the store owner directly unlocked the seal of the scroll in his hand. "Take out the goods in it." Even though he was prepared, when he saw the things in the sealed scroll, he couldn't control his eyes and they kept twitching. Although he had been in this black market for a long time and had seen a lot of things, the things the other party took out still made him feel difficult. Forget about the medicines on the table. This kind of thing is a scarce commodity in this war-torn era. He dared to take as many as he could, but the other 3 corpses were not easy to sell. If he was not careful, he would be hunted down by the rock ninja. "Customer." These 3 corpses, although he didn't say it clearly, Dong Shilang understood the other party's concerns from his tone. The other party obviously didn't want to get involved in such troublesome goods. "You might as well check it first, and then make a decision." Dong Shilang had expected the other party's reaction, but given the embarrassing living conditions of the other party and the people behind him, he believed that the other party would carefully consider whether to accept this business. After carefully checking the specific conditions of the 3 corpses, the expression of the shop owner became more entangled. At the same time, they had a clearer understanding of the strength of this customer who came late when the black market was about to end. This kind of person is definitely not someone they can afford to offend. "How about it? Are you still doing business this time?" He gritted his teeth. Although this business would bring him some trouble, if he was careful, it would not be a big problem. After all, if they succeeded in this business, their profits would be very considerable. Those human trafficking or flesh trades really cannot be compared with these. After all, these are the bodies of 2 rock ninja jonin and a special jonin. If they take them to places that specialize in purchasing these bodies, they will have quite a good harvest. As long as they can prevent the information from being leaked and don't let people know that these bodies flowed out of their hands, it will be fine. Then the other party checked the 20 bottles of medicine brought by Dong Shilang. After the inspection, although he was a little confused, he did not express anything. "These 3 bodies are worth 8 million taels in total, and these drugs, although only half a bottle, are worth 2 million taels." After a brief pause, the shopkeeper gave his price. And at the same time, he did not forget to say, "If the customer has more drugs, our shop will accept them." "Okay, but I also need to buy some scarce goods. 600 detonating talismans. I need them right away. I wonder if you can provide them here." Dong Shilang did not respond to the other party's request for more drugs. Although he was dissatisfied with the price quoted by the other party, he did not say much. Instead, he began to ask about the other party's business capabilities. "Okay, give me 10 minutes to prepare." Although 600 detonating talismans would inevitably need to be transferred from other places, it was not a big problem. "Then exchange the rest for cash." "No problem." 10 minutes later, Dong Shilang, who successfully completed the transaction, left the black market leisurely with Shizui, who was still a little dazed. Just after stepping out of the abandoned village, Dong Shilang had a vague feeling that he seemed to be targeted. Swish, swish, swish. He threw several shurikens in succession, and listened to the faint groans from behind and the footsteps when dodging. He was not surprised at all. In a place like this, if there were no spies from various villages, it would be a ghost. He had just made a big deal in the black market, and it was reasonable to be targeted. As long as the whereabouts of these tales were exposed, these people would retreat wisely, and there was no need to pay too much attention. The reason why he chose that store with not very strong strength to trade was that the other party's background was relatively clean. The goods he sold were all sensitive things. If he was not careful and was discovered by the village, he would not have a good ending. According to the requirements of the village, The bodies of the hostile jonin had to be handed over to the village for disposal, but this reward was just better than nothing. Judging from the nature of the village, they would probably send him away with 100 or 80 detonating tags or something like that. How could he do such a loss-making business? It's just a pity that now prices are rising and inflation is too serious. He didn't expect that the 2 jonins, including the body of a special jonin, were only worth 8 million taels. He remembered that Asuma in the original work was worth a full 35 million taels. He could only sigh that with the advent of a large-scale ninja war, it was becoming increasingly difficult to make money from the dead. As for the medicines, there were also some empty medicine bottles he collected on purpose. He asked his good uncle to help can them, in order not to attract attention, not to mention that the quantity shipped each time was relatively small. He didn't dare to fill it too full, and tried to disguise it as a battlefield seizure, including this black market. He would never come again after coming here once. What he was afraid of was that the village would find out something and cause some bad consequences. How is it? What do you think? While heading towards where his companions were, Toshiro also took the time to ask Shizui how he felt. He was very curious about how the future instant body Shizui would feel when he saw this kind of scene for the first time. I think we should work harder to maintain the village, so as to protect our companions in the village. We must never let this happen to Konoha. Did I do something wrong? Hearing the other party's answer, Toshiro did not expect that the other party would have such feelings. Chapter 195 Fortress. With the shocked Uchiha Shizui, he reunited with his companions before the sky was bright. After handing the detonating tag obtained from this transaction to Uchiha Saka, Danshiro looked at Hamura. The other party also understood what he meant, bit his finger directly, performed the summoning technique, and summoned a ninja cat that had signed a contract with him. Yoko? Is the cat lady ready? Holding his summoned beast in his arms and stroking it hard, Uchiha Hamura asked. Of course it's ready, meow. As long as you pay the bill, we can start the transaction immediately. Looking at the white-haired man who was enjoying himself in Uchiha Hamura's arms, Danshiro's heart couldn't help but ache when he heard the other party pay the bill. For this mission, this group of people really lost a lot of money, but if not, with the strength of their team, let alone whether they can complete the mission, even if they complete it, it is estimated that no one except him can return to the camp alive. This is the amount we agreed on in advance, and these are some materials we are collecting. Please give them to Granny Cat. He gave the money he had prepared in advance to the white cat, and also gave it another sealing scroll. Among them were some iron materials they collected, which were collected by the way when they were cleaning the battlefield after the battle. The purpose was to use these things to pay off the debt with Granny Cat. The amount is fine, and I have received the things, meow. In a while, let Yan summon my sister, and she will bring the things over. Yes, thank you for your trouble. Goodbye. After saying hello to Uchiha Yan, the summoned white cat turned into a ball of white smoke and returned to the empty area. In addition to the iron materials, he also took away most of the money left after this transaction. This made Dong Shiliang, who was short of money, feel very painful. The current arms business is really hot. For example, the detonating talisman used to cost 1 or 2,000 taels per piece, but at this time, the price has skyrocketed to 6,000 taels per piece. There are also shuriken, kunai, ninja swords, etc., and any war-related items have skyrocketed in price several times. Sometimes he couldn't help but think, what's the point of being a ninja? Wouldn't it be nice to do arms business like Grandma Cat? But reality doesn't allow him to do this. What bothers him the most is that the other party doesn't let him buy on credit, and must settle in cash, otherwise they won't ship to him at all. The reason is also quite powerful. If you are out of business, who will she go to for the debt? He has nothing to say. You can't not buy it, otherwise it won't take a few battles, and the ninja swords, kunai, shuriken and the like in your hand will be consumed, not to mention the detonating talismans. It's just that the cost of this really makes him shudder. For example, the detonating talismans this time, 600 pieces are distributed to so many people, and each person is allocated 40 pieces. Counting the usual seizures and those issued by the village, There are less than 60 pieces, and these 600 detonating talismans cost him 3.6 million taels, plus the consumption of ninja tools and medicines. There was really not much left this time. Most of it went into the pockets of these arms dealers. As for the village's supplies, there were only about 10 detonating talismans at a time, plus some military ration pills and so on. This is really a drop in the bucket, especially in this kind of battle behind enemy lines where there is no way to quickly resupply. Dong Shilang didn't have to wait for long. In just 10 minutes, Yan summoned his summoned beast again, and the other party also brought a large number of weapons ordered in advance. As long as the money is in place, the cat lady's delivery is still very fast. Let's go. Distribute the supplies in your hands one by one. Dong Shilang and his tribesmen hid in the surrounding bushes and rushed towards their mission target this time. 1 day later, in an open plain area in the land of grass, a yellow-brown earth and stone fortress stood quietly here. It seemed out of tune with the surrounding green grass. This is an outpost observation station of the rock ninjas here. Its function is to facilitate the reconnaissance troops of the rock ninjas, so that they can perform reconnaissance tasks more conveniently. At the same time, this is also an important node of the rock ninja camp, playing a supporting role. At the same time, it allows the rock ninja commanders in the camp to better control the movements of Konoha. Is our mission target this time this fortress? 5 or 6 kilometers away from this fortress, in a dense bush, a line of more than a dozen figures hid here and used binoculars in their hands to observe the target of their mission this time. Even though they were far apart, this group of people were still cautious, fearing that they would reveal any flaws and let the observers on the opposite side find out something. To talk about some of the strategies of the rock ninjas, it is really a headache. For example, this fortress in front of us, this group of rock ninjas built this fortress very solidly. Not only solid, but also airtight. Just a glance can tell to what extent they strengthened this place with their own earth escape ninjutsu when they built it. The ninjas of Konoha, facing these strongholds, felt like a dog biting a hedgehog and having nowhere to bite. No wonder you bought so many detonating tags this time. Without these things, it would be almost impossible for us to complete the mission with just a few people. Looking at the building opposite, Uchiha Tetsu said with a serious face, "Years of fighting on the battlefield have made this impetuous boy change a lot. Having been in danger several times, he no longer dares to do anything reckless. He is a completely different person than before." Even so, Toshiro, how sure are you? Confident? I don't know. I can only see the situation, just like now. If it was the Uchiha Tetsu before, he would never ask such a question. He would only ask him excitedly, "When do we start?" At this time, not only Uchiha Tetsu, but everyone in their team looked at the building in the distance with a serious face. "Yan, you and go find a place to stay first, and investigate the terrain nearby. Be careful not to let anyone find any traces." Although he is the captain of this team, there is no need for him to do everything by himself. Otherwise, what are so many teammates for? He casually gave instructions to Yan and at the same time, he was thinking about how to complete this mission. Chapter 196 Procrastination. The blue sky was cloudless. Cry. A clear and pleasant cry of an eagle cut through the sky. "Don't look at it, Kurosawa. It's just a goshawk hunting. Very ordinary, nothing to be surprised about." "Yes, Captain." He retracted his gaze from the goshawk he saw in the air and continued to observe the movements around him. He was indeed too nervous. It was indeed an ordinary eagle. The only special thing was that it was holding its prey in its claws. It was just a black snake. Well, there will always be some things that shouldn't be done when you just go to the battlefield. It will be fine after this period of time. "Yes, Captain." Seeing that his companion was a little suspicious, Kurosawa's superior, a 20-year-old rock ninja, spoke to comfort him. "The other party is still too young now. After he has performed a few battlefield missions, he will probably be fine. Don't be so serious, Kurosawa. You need to learn to relax yourself properly here, otherwise you will become nervous." Seeing his companions, so immature, the captain of the rock ninja began to teach Kurosawa some of his mission experience. He became nagging for a while. The two of them were mainly responsible for lookout and observing the slightest movement around the base. This was a very boring job. If their teammates became nervous again, it would be terrible, and in a place they could not see, a group of Konoha ninjas were gathering together waiting for something. Not long after, the hawk flew over from a low altitude and dropped its prey. Then, as if it was frightened, it flapped its wings randomly a few times, picked a random direction and flew away. It was extremely anxious. The prey that it had previously caught in its eagle claws staggered and climbed onto an open scroll. Then it collapsed and turned into a simple map, which was the building topography map inside the base. This reconnaissance didn't seem to attract the other party's attention. Uchiha Longyuo on the side breathed a sigh of relief. This is already the fourth high-altitude reconnaissance, but with Dong Shilang's preparation, it's normal that he wasn't discovered. Not only Longyuo, but also several of their older team members gathered here, but there were exceptions, such as Uchiha Shizui among them. Dong Shilang specially brought this genius with him. Senior knows a lot, and he is proficient in everything. It's really amazing. Shizui is also able to talk. You don't need to envy now. When you are older, I believe you can easily learn these things. In order to avoid alerting the enemy in advance, Dong Shilang had to be cautious, for fear of alarming the other party. Just now, he didn't just perform a simple super beast fake painting, but also controlled an ordinary goshawk as a cover. Even so, he still felt it was not enough, for fear that those perceptive ninjas would discover the chakra fluctuations in the ninjutsu. On the little snake that played the role of prey, some chakra shielding measures were taken, and with the cover of the hawk, layer upon layer, it was hidden from the detection of the rock ninja. I just don't know if my other actions have aroused the other party's ideas yet. How is the retreat plan prepared? You know, if this mission is not handled well, we may be wiped out. No problem, including the one you prepared. There are a total of 3 plans. This is the limit we can do. Yeah, Kyoxia, Longyuo. What about you? How are they? Are they alright? No problem. After 3 days of recuperation, they have all recovered to their best condition. It turned out that this was the 3rd day that Dong Shilang came to this place. In order to collect more intelligence and to minimize casualties, this group of people did not rush to attack. Instead, they secretly observed and prepared for 3 days. No flaws have been revealed. No X4. Dong Shilang was quite satisfied with the answers of his teammates. After so many years of battlefield tempering, his friends were no longer the little ghosts that made people worry. Each of them has become a ninja who can stand on his own. Since they began to step onto the battlefield, the cruel wars have not only made them all open their Sharingan, but also because many of their companions have passed away in front of their eyes, they have become more diligent in pursuing strength, especially in this kind of long-term infiltration station without logistical follow-up. The last flaws of these people have been completely eliminated. Captain, I have a question. Well, it's about the problem of us delaying the mission time. Before the other party could say the question, Dong Shilang interrupted him. Yes, didn't the mission require us to destroy the Iwagakure base 3 days ago? Is it really okay for us to postpone the attack like this? Then what do you think would happen if we attacked this base 3 days ago? Putting aside our own casualties, do you think we can successfully complete the mission by attacking this base rashly without collecting enough intelligence? Dong Shilang's approach was still a little incomprehensible to him now. With the education he received in the ninja school, such a thing would never be done, but he didn't say anything to stop him. At this time, he felt that if he didn't ask now, he might not have the opportunity to ask the other party, so he spoke. Instead of answering the other party's question, Dong Shilang asked the other party. This should be impossible. But shouldn't ninjas take missions as their absolute creed? You are still young. When you grow up, I believe you will be able to understand some things slowly without me saying anything. He didn't explain too much to Shizui's question. There was no need for it, because he found a problem that gave him a headache. Most of the ninjas in the family, especially those who had opened their eyes, had their own way of thinking. Once they were determined to do something, they really couldn't be pulled back. He could only slowly influence them. But at this time, he didn't have time to talk nonsense with them. There was nothing wrong with letting them understand these things slowly. He had never been a lecturer and didn't have the ability to fool others. He was able to ensure that he would not be fooled, thanks to the blessing of the world in his previous life. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197 Air Raid. Faced with Dong Shilang's obviously perfunctory answer, Shizui was obviously not ready to give up, and continued to ask, "But in this case, Captain, aren't you afraid of the village's punishment?" It is indeed as Shizui said, if ordinary ninjas delay the mission time or something, they will probably not have any good results. The best result is to be thrown into the most dangerous position to perform some dangerous tasks with a slim chance of survival. But what is the meaning of these punishments for them? In the front line camp, are there any tasks more dangerous than those they are performing? Even if there are, the family will help them block it. Otherwise, why would Dong Shilang be so active and clinging to the thighs of the family, helping to get the summoning beast and handing in the ninjutsu? Isn't it all for this day? This is also the difference between having a backstage and not having a backstage. Although the current situation of himself and others is also caused by their backstage, they have no choice. In the eyes of some people, they have been labeled as unstable, dangerous, and even evil from the moment they were born. He had no choice, but he also prepared a plan B. If it really didn't work out, he didn't mind defecting directly. Anyway, his current strength is no longer as weak as before. He is more confident that he can evade Konoha's pursuit. By then, it shouldn't be a problem to get a uniform in the Akatsuki organization, but this will inevitably implicate his relatives and friends in the family. He won't consider this path unless it is absolutely necessary. Shizui, you have to remember, sometimes, compared to temporary success or failure, the lives of yourself and your companions are more important. Don't give up your life easily because of some insignificant things. This child will commit suicide in the future because he can't use Kodoa Mitsukami to stop the family coup. The purpose was to delay the family coup, create opportunities for Uchi, and help him open his eyes. Only when people are alive can they have infinite possibilities. Only when they are alive can they create miracles. Don't die easily. He casually poured a bowl of chicken soup to the other party, regardless of whether it suited the other party's appetite or not. Tawashiro took out the original map and began to compare the intelligence obtained from several investigations to see if there were any differences. As for the insignificant things he just mentioned, he was not really perfunctory to Shizui, but in his opinion, the mission of attacking the stronghold this time was really insignificant. What if he and others can destroy the Iwagakure stronghold more thoroughly this time? It won't take long for the other party to build an identical fortress. Moreover, the newly built ones will be thicker and more difficult to defend than the original ones unless Konoha can gain an absolute advantage on the main battlefield and bring this area under Konoha's control with the power of victory. Otherwise any action will be meaningless, but such a thing is obviously impossible to happen. The land of lightning, the land of water, and the land of wind have involved too much energy of Konoha. It is almost impossible for Konoha to make a breakthrough on the battlefield of the land of grass. Not to mention that the joining of the Cloud Ninja has doubled the pressure on Konoha. That night, around 4 o'clock in the morning, in a forest nearly 10 kilometers away from this stronghold, finally, check the weapons on each of you. Dong Shilang, who was dressed in regular combat uniforms, looked solemn and began the final arrangements before the war. Flames. Long Huo, Kaoxia, do you have any questions about your respective team's mission? After getting the answer he wanted, Dong Shilang continued. In that case, let's start this mission. I hope everyone present can complete this mission safely. Yes, a uniform response echoed in this dense primeval forest. Everyone answered, full of solemnity and coldness. Dong Shilang then unfolded a huge rotating shaft. With his chakra input, 5 huge birds with a wingspan of 14 or 15 meters leaped out from the white paper spread on the ground. Let's go. With Dong Shilang's order, a full 15 Uchiha clansmen, in groups of 3, jumped onto the backs of these birds, and these birds then took them across the sky and headed for the target of this mission. A distance of 10 kilometers may require these ninjas to spend some time and energy on the ground to reach the destination, but if they walk in the air, this distance is basically fleeting. As the distance gradually approached, these birds flying in the sky, created by the fake paintings of super beasts, began to descend at a very fast speed. Using the dive, gravity, and the kinetic energy they carried, they began to sprint, making their speed at this time almost reach the maximum limit that birds can reach. As a result, the figures wearing goggles sitting on their backs increased their chakra output one after another, fearing that they would be blown away by the turbulent airflow in the air if they were not careful. If they fell like this, they would probably only be able to rely on themselves to fight for a slight chance of survival. Their captain would not turn back to save them because of their mistakes at this time, so they could only pray for good luck as the distance to the ground got closer and closer. These birds, under the control of Dong Shilang, began to change their flight angle from the initial dive to level with the ground. Under the cover of night, Dong Shilang and his group, flying close to the ground, hid beyond the sight of the rock ninja lookout. It was not until the figures approached 300 meters away that they were noticed by the whistling sound caused by their extremely fast flight. This is enemy attack. Quick, quick, quick! Sound the alarm. The two night watchmen stared at the huge figures looming in the dark, stunned. However, the Iwagakure ninjas who were assigned to such an important position as the sentry post undoubtedly had a relatively good psychological quality. After just a moment of daze, the Iwagakure ninja who led the team came back to his senses. He began to scream at the top of his lungs. The distance of only 300 meters was too close for them to accelerate by diving. Before the Iwagakure ninja's observation posts sounded the alarm, they had already rushed into the stronghold. Chapter 198, Boundary. Just as Tawashiru controlled these birds to dive in the Iwagakure base, in a spacious stone building in the center, Ryokshi, when will the barrier master and the camp come to take a look at our perception barrier? It has been reported for 2 days. If there are always false alarms like this, it will be difficult for us perception personnel to work normally. In the center of the house, on a cylindrical platform with a diameter of about 3 meters, a middle-aged Iwagakure, about 30 years old, was sitting. At this time, the middle-aged ninja was complaining to his colleagues in the same room because of several flickering spots on the cylinder. There is a problem at this location, not once or twice. I don't know what's wrong with this perception array. From time to time in the past few days, there will be an alarm, and they are all false alarms, which makes them, the perception personnel, make a lot of embarrassment. After checking with his colleagues, he didn't find any problems. But they were not surprised. Such sophisticated and high-end things are simply not something that they, the perception personnel, can understand. With no other options, they could only ask for help from the main camp. It's not that there are no talents in the rock ninja in terms of sensing barriers, but they are too scarce. And the stability of this small sensing barrier is not very good, which makes the limited number of barrier masters too busy, and there is really no way to come to their base in a short time. Don't complain about these things. It's already a blessing to have a sensing barrier. As for asking the barrier master to come and take a look, don't even think about it for 3 or 5 days. The colleague named Liangchen responded to the other party at this time, and did not forget to ask, which direction is the problem? Is it the same place? I also need to report to the lookout team and let them observe the situation here carefully to prevent Konoha and Cloud Ninja from attacking. Although he said so, this colleague named Liangchen did not feel urgent at all. Instead, he stood up calmly and looked leisurely. This is not Liangchen's negligence, but it is really that this sensing barrier is too easy to go wrong, especially in the past few days. At the beginning, they were still nervous, but after the number of false alarms increased, he inevitably became a little careless. Not to mention this time, that group of barrier masters really like to brag. At the beginning, they boasted about how powerful the barrier they set up was, but in the end, as far as I know, it's not just our base that has problems. There are several places with similar problems. Yeah, there are always problems in the southwest. Before he finished his sentence, the few flashing dots that originally appeared in the southwest direction of the cylinder stopped flashing. The light spots on it changed from a flashing state to a continuous glow, and the shining light spots became larger and larger, and the light emitted gradually became dazzling. something happened. The two people who discovered the change almost at the same time thought that there might be something wrong outside. Although this type of standard barrier has many minor problems, it is almost impossible for this level of chakra reaction false alarms to occur. This kind of barrier cannot sense such a strong reaction in some ordinary animals. The only ones who can cause this result are ninjas, and a large number of ninjas. Otherwise, the rock ninjas wouldn't have equipped this kind of perception barrier. But before they could even scream, a series of whistling noises broke into the room through the thick walls, causing the two men's faces to turn pale. Disperse. As the 5 birds rushed into the stronghold, Dong Shilang seized the opportunity and manipulated them to turning the people on their backs upside down on the ground, including himself. Then he controlled these chakra creations, stretched his neck, and crashed into the tallest buildings in the stronghold. It's not that Dong Shilang didn't want to use these chakra creations to help him deal with these rock ninjas. It's really that these rock ninjas built the walls too thick when they built the stronghold. What's more, they even placed a talisman in the walls of some buildings to strengthen the defense. Without sacrificing them, it would be impossible for Yen and the others to break through the defense of a large number of buildings in a short time. As for Dong Shilang and his people, if they wanted to raid such a stronghold with no less than 60 people, if there was any delay, they might be surrounded by the rock ninja. At this time, Dong Shilang also had his own things to do. While still in midair, his feet had just left the backs of the birds, and Dong Shilang's hands had already begun to form seals. When his feet landed on the ground, 5 balls of blue chakra on the 5 fingers of his right hand emitted a blue flame-like light, and he pressed them to the ground. Boundary. Uchiha missed with his light shout. A circle of square transparent barriers around the entire rock ninja camp began to rise rapidly, covering the rock ninja camp in the barrier. In just 1 or 2 seconds, the transparent surface of the entire barrier began to become turbid. From a distance, it looked like a mountain mist that enveloped the entire camp. The camp seemed to be isolated from the outside world, as if it had become 2 independent worlds. The sound and light from the outside world could not penetrate in, and the light and sound inside could not be transmitted out. Dong Shilang cast this barrier technique that consumes a lot of chakra for this effect. Otherwise, when they attack this stronghold, the Iwagakure roaming nearby will immediately notice the movement here. What they are facing is not just the Iwagakure ninjas in the stronghold. If they are entangled by the Iwagakure ninjas in the stronghold, they will be in danger. Now, with the existence of this barrier, plus it is still night, it can help them better hide their actions this time, allowing them to use all means unscrupulously. Just when the barrier just rose, the birds driven by him stretched their necks and concentrated all the potential energy brought by the dive and flight on their sharp long beaks. When Dong Shilang made these chakra creations, he chose a shape similar to that of a crane, which was just right at this time, so that they could use their long sharp beaks to break through the outer wall of the building. Chapter 199 Explosion. What happened? Just when the Iwagakure ninja's perception ninja found something wrong, the tall building in the middle of the camp, a middle-aged Iwagakure ninja who wore an Iwagakure forehead protector and a red headscarf on his head had a bad feeling. Before his subordinates could answer, a black slender bird's beak broke through the door of the building with a muffled sound and appeared in front of him. Then came the continuous sound of heavy objects hitting each other. He and his subordinates were confused. Where is the perception ninja? What happened? There is an enemy. Before he could say his question, he, as a senior ninja, felt that danger was imminent. He looked down and saw that the bird's beak that appeared in the building was making an inaudible hissing sound. Detonating talisman. With only time to sound a shrill alarm, the rock ninja's Jonin activated his ninjutsu and fled underground, hoping to avoid the next explosion. At this time, it was not just the building he was in. The tallest buildings in the camp were all taken care of by these chakra creatures with wide wingspans. They either directly broke through the door or used their long sharp beaks to deeply pierce the wall. When they pierced the beaks into the wall, you could see a flash of lightning. This allowed them to successfully break through the incredibly thick walls of the rock ninja. At this time, throughout the camp, there were ghostly figures throwing kunai through the doors and windows into the smaller buildings. Through the faint firelight in the camp, You could vaguely see that behind the rings at the end of these kunai, there were pieces of paper covered with ghostly talismans. They were the detonating talismans that Toshiro had bought on the black market before. The figures who threw these deadly weapons into the Iwagakure building were the Uchiha members who had just been thrown off the backs of the birds. With the ninjas' physical fitness that exceeded that of ordinary people and their advanced preparation, they overcame the discomfort brought by the airborne. They did not dare to delay at all, and shot the detonating tags they had prepared in advance into the houses where Iwagakure might be. They all knew that if their raid could not effectively kill the Iwagakure in this camp, they would face the crazy revenge of the surviving Iwagakure. Whether they could survive depended on the effect of this raid, so they did not dare to be negligent. Boom, boom, boom. It was only 3 or 5 seconds, and the barrier set up by Dong Shilang had just risen, and a series of explosions rang out from the buildings. What followed was the dazzling fire and smoke, especially those tall buildings that were specially taken care of. The explosions were even more deafening. Dong Shilang stuffed 30 detonating tags into the mouths of those chakra creatures made by Dong Shilang's super beast fake paintings, 5 at a time. A total of 150 detonating tags exploded together, and the momentum they brought was no more than the effect of ordinary S-level ninjutsu. Crash. As the continuous explosions subsided, from time to time there were some building debris, mixed with some broken limbs and arms falling from the sky. The true meaning of war is explosion, with the occasional flashing firelight. Looking at the buildings that collapsed due to the explosion, and the screams of terror that were faintly heard in the explosion, illuminated by the flickering firelight, Dong Shilang expressed a different feeling expressionlessly. This time, including the 600 detonating tags he bought and the ones they already had, there were more than 800 detonating tags in total. Except for a few emergency tickets left by each person, almost all of them were used. Although the effect has not been carefully checked, the sound and light effects alone are already very amazing. I think it is worthy of his preparations for so many days. For this raid, he can be said to have exhausted all the methods he can think of. You know, the entire rock ninja camp is covered by a layer of perception barrier. Although the distance is not very far, it is only less than 2 kilometers away. But any ninja who enters this range will be discovered by the perception ninja of the rock ninja. In addition, the buildings in the stronghold have been specially strengthened by the rock ninja. It is extremely difficult to capture this stronghold by sneak attack, not to mention destroying it. Just the outermost layer of perception barrier, no one can approach them silently. Although there are some flaws in the barrier, it will react to some ordinary animals that break into the barrier, resulting in some false alarms. But with those lookouts, the possibility of sneak attacks can basically be eliminated. This is also an indispensable means of defense for every rock ninja stronghold. In order to prevent sneak attacks by ninjas, in order to overcome this, Dong Shilang started preparing 3 days ago, controlling some slightly larger animals from time to time, or directly using super beast fake paintings to create some chakra sources, triggering the perception barrier, making it constantly alarm, in order to paralyze those perception ninjas. And this is only to gain 10 seconds, because as long as there are 10 seconds, the birds controlled by him can use the acceleration of diving to cross the perception barrier of less than 2 kilometers. Before the raid, he was extremely worried that such temptation and misleading would backfire and make the rock ninjas in the stronghold wary. But he had to take such a risk. Only in this way can this raid be launched. Otherwise the offensive methods that they can choose will become very few. In addition to the strong attack, there is basically no good way. But in this way, their casualties are almost uncontrollable. According to his observations in the past few days, there are no less than 60 people stationed in this rock ninja stronghold. Counting the rock ninjas who came here for supplies, treatment, and rest, the number of people was likely close to 100, and they also had the advantage of terrain. Even if he activated the Sage mode, he probably couldn't do anything good with this camp, and the tribesmen behind him had no chance of surviving. Except for him, I guess every one of them would die. Chapter 200 Delusion. The night in the land of grass was quiet. Located in this plain, a light mist began to spread over the grass. From a distance, It looked like the morning mist that is very common in the forest. Although it seemed a little too early, it did not attract anyone's attention. After all, it was not long before dawn. In this mist, a square barrier was standing in it, enveloping a piece of ruins. A trace of white moonlight, shining quietly, made this place look like a ghost land. Among the rubble, there was no noise except for the faint groans of pain from those who could not control their pain. It's almost time to start the next plan. Looking at the situation around, Dong Xilang did not say more, but just asked these fellow tribesmen to act according to the original plan. Everyone be careful. It was only at the last moment that he was really worried and reminded his fellow tribesmen. These people followed him and experienced one battle after another, and finally survived to this day. If possible, he did not want any of them to get into trouble. Without much talk, everyone, including Shizui, just nodded to Toshiro at this time, and then they hid in the ruined stronghold in groups of 3 and began to do the final harvest. They knew that this was their most dangerous moment. Those ordinary middle and lower ninjas might not be able to escape their surprise attack, but there were some experienced old-fashioned middle and upper ninjas. It was just because of this sudden attack that they didn't come back to their senses for a while. At this time, they must have been hiding underground or behind the collapsed buildings, carefully observing the slightest movement in the stronghold. Once they figured out the situation, or gathered a few companions, their troubles would follow. At this time, Toshiro was not idle either, but pulled out a green flute from his waist, put it to his mouth, and began to play slowly. Then a melodious flute sound, like a girl's confession, drilled into the ears of every rock ninja who heard the flute sound. The melody was lingering and plaintive. A song of the sea of clouds under the moon began to echo in this Shura field. As the sound of the flute sounded, from time to time, the rock ninjas hiding in the dark began to hum along, exposing their positions at the same time. They made themselves living targets, and were taken away by the Uchiha clan members who were harvesting the lives of the injured rock ninjas in groups of 3. No, it's an illusion. It was the rock ninja wearing a red headscarf who first discovered that something was wrong. As soon as he heard the flute sound, he felt that he was on a wide cloud, with soft clouds under him and an endless sea of clouds all around him. A round of white moon was casting a round of cold moonlight on this sea of clouds and on himself at this time. Coupled with the melodious flute sound, he felt that he was out of control and wanted to indulge in this picturesque scenery forever. However, his mental strength as a Jonin allowed him to react immediately and dispel the illusion that could control him without him noticing. We can't continue to be so passive. If we can't interrupt the person who casts the illusion, no one in this base will be able to escape. Hiding underground, he was observing every move in the base through his own secret technique. He watched his companions being easily killed by the attackers, and he couldn't help but get anxious, especially the wounded who were just screaming involuntarily. But now there are fewer and fewer. Someone must stand up and interrupt the other party at this time. Looking at the figure who was playing the sound of death, he gritted his teeth and decided to try it out. Earth style, Earth Dragon Bomb. As a stone dragon had formed on the ground, it spit out a large number of mud bombs filled with chakra and smashed towards Toshiro's figure. At this time, all the rock ninjas in the base who could maintain their mobility were counted as one. Seeing someone take action, everyone launched their long-planned offensive. Suddenly, the entire stronghold became extremely lively. Ninjutsu such as Earth and Rock Flow, Earth and Stone Dragon, and Earth Flow Gun attacked the Uchiha clan members who were harvesting the wounded. The ninjas who survived the attack knew that although they had escaped the opponent's illusion, this was only limited to powerful ninjas like themselves. Those surviving Chunin and the like probably didn't have this ability. And if a master of illusion was allowed to cast his illusion recklessly, their outcome would be almost predetermined. In this case, if someone took the lead, they would jump out immediately. Not to mention defeating the opponent directly, it would be good to save a few companions. Is this an illusion clone? With a large number of earth and rock bombs, the Earth and Stone Dragon hit Dong Shulang's figure. The imagined thing that the opponent stopped casting illusions did not happen. The opponent's figure just fluctuated with the ninjutsu that penetrated himself, and then returned to normal, just like the bright moon reflected in the water. As the ripples calmed down, It returned to its original state. Even the opponent's flute sound did not change because of his attack. It was as if all this had never happened. If it weren't for his companions who successfully rescued some companions who were trapped in illusions from time to time, he would have thought that all this had never happened. What should we do? Dachiju, the opponent's illusion is quite troublesome. If we keep hiding underground, it's okay. Once we go above the ground, the opponent's illusion will become even more terrifying. At this time, a chakra that Dachiju felt very familiar with slowly approached. At the same time, he also said, "We must find a way to deal with the opponent's illusion, ninja. Otherwise, even if we go up, we will be suppressed by the opponent." "I know, but I just tried it. I believe you also saw that it was just a trick of the opponent. Where is the real body? It can't be found at all." While speaking, at the same time, some of his eyes twitched uncontrollably, and he did not forget to ask, "What is our current situation? How many people are there now?" End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.